Hare Krishna.
Hare
Krishna.
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami
Iti
Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paskachadesha Tarine.
Namaste
Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paskachadesha Tarine. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Jaya
Shri Krishna
Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Well, today we are starting the last book in Bhakti Shastri. Yay! And then you're all going to get your official ISKCON Bhakti Shastri certificates. Yay! All right. So our verses. (1866) Bhagavad Gita. Sarvadharman parityaja mamekam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami ma suchaha. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. And then Nectar of Devotion is a very important verse, which we'll be discussing today. This is the one you're learning for this week. Anya bilashita shunyam jnana karma janavritam anukulyena krishnanu shilanam bhaktiruttama. One should render transcendental loving service to the Supreme Lord Krishna favorably and without desire for material profit or gain through fruitive activities or philosophical speculation. That is called pure devotional service. So, your questions for this week on Preface, Intro, and Chapter 1 of the Nectar of Devotion.
Hare Krishna, Mother. It is really becoming difficult to get the questions as the course was progressing. Earlier, it was getting easier, but as the course was coming to the end, I'm really struggling to even get the questions as well.
Why? Because now you know everything.
Not really, because I understand that I don't know anything.
Well, if you don't know anything, then the writing question should be easier,
Yeah, could be.
right?
Well, I still try to put it on the other side itself, saying that I don't know anything.
If you don't know anything, then you should have 1,000 questions.
You just recited that one last verse, right? On Sarva Dharman Parityajya. That's so the only one thing I'm knowing it. So
Then you should have at least 3 questions for each of these classes. No problem.
yeah, maybe I'll again retry it maybe at the end of the class or after the session, because
Well,
when I was reading.
I really want that when you are studying in preparation for the class, that you think of 3 questions. It's something, I can't force you, Hare Krishna, but it's something that will really greatly increase the value of this class. So, I mean, greatly.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
For me too,
Now
it will
you
also make me happy. If people
Hare
have no questions, then we're not happy. Just like Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he wasn't happy when Lord Chaitanya had no questions. Then you just feel like you're talking to walls,
Yeah.
I don't have any questions. It's teacher. Yes, it's a Gopi.
yeah, you were reciting the mantra. Actually, I have this book, Nectar of Devotion. I didn't see that mantra here.
Now, that's a very good question. So Nectar Devotion is a summary study of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and that mantra is in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So Srila Prabhupada's talking about the mantra, but he's not quoting it. It is quoted in other places in Srila Prabhupada's books, especially Chaitanya Charitamrita. But that was a very good question. Where are those mantras in this book? They're not there. They're not there.
Then how to study if the purport of that mantra, Mataji? We have to get some book other than this, or you will
No,
provide
we
us?
will do that in today's class.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Excellent question. Okay, as a society, how can we keep our jobs when we're following in the footsteps of the Goswamis, of which Rupa and Sanatan gave up their jobs to join Lord Chaitanya? Well, they became renunciates. They became renunciates a little early in life, basically because their jobs were, they had Muslim families and everything. So, we can follow in their footsteps by renouncing at the proper time. But we also have many devotees of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu who did keep their jobs. I mean, it's interesting, Ramananda Roya, he gave up his job to move to Jagannath Puri, and Maharaj Prataparuda paid his full salary as if he was still working. But his brother Gopinath Pattanayaka, Lord Chaitanya wanted him to keep his job, because he said, I'm ready to renounce. And Lord Chaitanya said, well, if you renounce, who's going to take care of your large family? He said, it doesn't matter whether you renounce or whether you work. Good question. Prabhupada writes that death is taken as a representative. Is Yamaraj not considered a representative of God? Yeah, he is. What's the value of the action in Krishna consciousness before initiation? That we will talk about. I'm glad you asked that. And that's one of the things we'll talk about in today's class. Oh, how does rasa and fear appear to look like? Of course, this is really discussed later in the Nectar of Devotion, in parts of the Nectar of Devotion that we don't study in Bhakti Shastri. The last fourth of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu and Nectar of Devotion is about the 7 secondary rasas. So I would really suggest that you look in the Nectar of Devotion, right, at the tell you which chapter it is. Dread and ghastliness. So that's chapter 48. So if you want to study more about that, that's in chapter 48, because part 4 is about the 7 secondary rasas. And Bhanuswami has translated the full Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu with the commentaries of Jiva Goswami and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So if you really want to deeply understand Nectar Devotion, you really have to go to Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And I know he's a controversial person, and for good reason he's a controversial person. So I hesitate to mention this, but it is what it is. So Dhanadhara Swami compiled a book called Waves of Devotion, where he referenced every part of the Nectar Devotion to Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And it really does, that book really does make the Nectar Devotion easier to understand. I think at the beginning of our Bhakti Shastri course, we did give you information about Waves of Devotion, and I have it electronically if you want it. Again, I kind of hesitate to recommend a book by Dhanadhara Swami because he's controversial for good reasons, but it is an excellent book. I mean, he really did a good job. So, and I would say the vast majority of the leaders and preachers of ISKCON have read his book and reference his book in their teachings of Nectar Devotion. All right, chapter 1, relief from material distress, but ignorance is no excuse. Sinful activities are two kinds. So we'll discuss that today. Good question, we will discuss that. Rarity of devotional service. Oh, is it up to the jiva, or do we have to wait for Krishna's mercy? That's the conundrum, isn't it? We'll be discussing that too. Excellent, excellent, very thoughtful, thank you. See, when people ask questions like this, I know, immediately I can tell, wow, this is a student who's really interacting with the books. You know, this book is Rupa Goswami speaking to us and Srila Prabhupada speaking to us. And when I read questions like that, this is someone who's really understanding that the book is interacting with the person. Okay, people doing service without initiation, yes. I'm glad. Another question on that, we will be discussing that. How can we get pure devotees' blessings when they are not reachable or far away from us? They're as close as this book. As soon as you open this book and read it, there's Prabhupada's lotus feet, dust from his lotus feet, and there's Rupa Goswami, dust from his lotus feet. Lord Chaitanya's dust from his lotus feet. Devotional service is to follow in the footsteps of Radharani. How can we follow in the footsteps of Radharani? Well, as soon as we're in Lord Chaitanya's movement, we're following in the footsteps of Radharani because he's Krishna in Radharani's mood. So that's actually pretty simple for us to do that. If we're part of Lord Chaitanya's preaching movement, then automatically we're following the footsteps of Srimati Radharani, whose compassion, Krishna's compassion. I would say also, when people upset us, hurt us, betray us, I was on the phone for 2 hours yesterday with a devotee who was horribly betrayed by another living entity, is to have compassion. You know, we tend, when people hurt us or disappoint us, anger us, to be disappointed, hurt, and angry, rather than compassionate. So Radharani's mood is that of compassion.
So Mataji, is it like we read in Nectar of Instruction that in the Raganuga stage we can go to Vrindavan and then surrender ourselves to some devotee who is taking the footstep, who is following the footsteps of manjaris or maid servants of Radharani? We have to learn from
We'll
them.
be discussing that a little bit today in the second class when we talk about the difference between Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti and Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. So we'll be talking about that a little bit today when we discuss chapter 2. And then we'll be discussing it a lot more in the chapters on Raganuga Bhakti, which I think are 15 and 16. So that we'll be talking about that more. What does it mean to practice Raganuga Bhakti? But in a general way, all of us in Lord Chaitanya's movement can follow in the footsteps of Srimati Radharani by developing a mood of compassion. If I don't explain it well enough when we get to chapter 2, let me know, okay? If you have some. Once we are initiated by a bona fide spiritual master, do all our immature sins vanquish? Yeah, if we cooperate. Engaging in devotional service vanquishes sins. It's only relevant for pure devotees or also neophytes. We'll be discussing that quite a lot, the different levels of sin. What does it mean by happiness in Krishna consciousness? How do we distinguish this from sense gratification from performing? Oh, what a nice question. This is such a nice question, Rasa Bhakti. Are you there, Rasa Bhakti? I just see a black rectangle. There you are.
Yes, Mother, I'm here.
Okay.
My house is a mess right now because you're in the middle of moving. So
I just see a wall and a clock. I don't see any of your mess. So I one time visiting a devotee's house who said, "Don't look at my mess." And then immediately I started looking around for the mess. I thought it would have been better if she had not said anything. Just been talking to her instead of looking for her messes. I really like this question. What does it mean by happiness in Krishna consciousness? How do we distinguish this from sense gratification from performing devotional activities? Because there is some sense gratification in performing devotional activities. You know, prasadam tastes nice and kirtan sounds nice. And, you know, we're going to get some false ego pride from everyone telling us we're doing this service nicely and that service. So we definitely have that. Happiness in Krishna consciousness includes the happiness of the material world. So whatever happiness we feel in this material world, it's included in Krishna consciousness. And it's not that we have to be afraid of enjoying the taste of prasadam or enjoying the music of the kirtan or something like that. Now we even talked about earlier, I'm pretty sure, in this Bhakti Shastri, in chapter 16, about the pride that I'm Krishna's servant. I'm Krishna's servant. I'm a servant. It's an odd kind of pride, isn't it? And the materially, we take pride of being a master, not of being a servant. I often say people don't tell their children, you know, I want you to grow up and be a waitress. You know, I want you to grow up and be a butler. That's street sweeper. But we have a pride. I'm Krishna's servant. I'm a servant of a servant of a servant of Krishna. So that's included. But how do we know that what we're enjoying? I think we could also say, how do we know when what we're enjoying is really just sense gratification, when the service value, when it's not service that's also satisfying us on all levels, but when our motives are wrong. And this is very nicely discussed in Raghunath Das Goswami's Manashiksha, verse 6, I believe, where he talks about where you think you're getting clean by your service, but actually you're bathing in donkey urine. You know, where we think I'm doing this service to please Guru and Krishna, but actually we're not. We're really doing it for some other motive. And the main symptom Raghunath Das Goswami gives is that we'll experience burning. And so, you know, if we're engaged in devotional service for reasons other than pleasing Krishna, and of course we'll talk about that with Anya Vilasita Shunyam, then we'll feel angry, we'll feel disappointed, we'll feel irritated. There'll be a burning sensation, there'll be a sense of dissatisfaction. And we can take that burning sensation as dedication. We can also misinterpret that. So, you know, I have a devotee friend, or she used to be a friend. I don't think she considers herself my friend anymore. But she would say that she was like a walking volcano. And I mean, I remember at one point thinking of myself like that, thinking that, you know, I have a fireball inside me. And I thought that it was dedication. I thought that, you know, it was a sign of dedication. And I found out that it wasn't. I found out that it was just envy and pride. If we're actually taking happiness and Krishna's happiness, we'll also enjoy on every level. It's not that I can't enjoy the pizza prasadam from taking happiness and pleasing Krishna. But I'll feel a sense of joy and peace within. There's one devotee, Sanaka Rishi Gurukuli, who for many years was working to try to stop child abuse in ISKCON. A good thing to do. And in trying to stop child abuse in ISKCON, he would write letters and write articles and make movies that were very critical of devotees. And he had a lot of anger. So in the last year or so, he wrote an apology letter where he said that he realized that he was using the children of the movement for his own gratification, that he was using the cause of child abuse for his own ego and his own envy and his own pride. And he said, therefore, I was also a child abuser because I was using the children for my own pleasure. He said, I wasn't any better. And that's the concept where Maharaj Pariksit says, or Dharma the Bull says, if you name the perpetrator, you become just as guilty. So it was a very interesting apology that he said, I thought it was bhakti, but it was actually not. So how we tell that is primarily internal. I mean, other people can usually see it. It's usually obvious to us when somebody's motivated in some low way. But at least for ourselves, we don't see it. But we can see it subjectively. Am I feeling joy and gratitude and appreciation and peace? Or am I feeling, irritation and aggravation? I know Bhakti Tirtha Swami said it, but he's not the first person to say it. He got it from someone else, and I don't know where it originated from, but I think it's very wise. So if you're carrying, I have some herbal tea here that I'm keeping in this nice thing by the grace of Mahalakshmi. Thank you, Mahalakshmi. So, no, she's not there when I think. Let's see. So I have this cup. It's full of hot herbal tea. Right? And so if you bump me and I spill it, I'm going to spill hot herbal tea. And if I had a cup full of orange juice and you bumped into me, I would spill orange juice. So the cause of what I spill is what I have in my cup. So one way we can tell what our motives are is how do we respond when there's aggravating circumstances in life. This is explained when Bhrigu Muni is testing Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, and that one's greatness is measured by one's ability to tolerate provoking circumstances. So, one second, I need to answer something. What was I saying? So when we're provoked, what comes out of us is what comes out of us joy and compassion, or is what comes out of us irritation and being offended and so forth. That's a very good indication of what we're trying to enjoy in our devotional service. Because it's possible to put on a show for ourselves and others. People do it all the time. In every religious system, people are putting on a show of spiritual advancement and holiness, and many times they believe it themselves. But what happens when we get bumped? What spills out of our cup? So if my happiness isn't pleasing Krishna, what will spill out of my cup is compassion and humor. And if I'm really working just for my own sense gratification, then what spills out of my cup is lust, anger, greed in some form. Pride.
Hare Krishna Mataji, like if the anger has to be used in a right way, right? Isn't it? Like used in the service of Krishna. So in that case, that's
Be careful. Be careful. I mean, I'm just in chapter 7, Nectar of Devotion. Rupa Goswami says that if we have lamentation and anger, we can't meditate on Krishna. It's not possible. So there is an anger rasa, which again, we don't study in the Bhakti Shastri course. And again, that's in chapter 47. There is an anger rasa. But if you want to think of what's an anger rasa, it's like I tell the story how years ago, my youngest son, who did not know how to swim at the time, we had a little inflatable boat, and we lived right near, I mean, I still do here, a river that has a waterfall. So some friend convinced my son to go in this little inflatable raft without asking us. You know, I look around and he's just gone. And then I noticed the raft was gone. So I run to the river and I was furious. I was absolutely furious. Why? Because I love him and I didn't want him to drown. You know, our anger materially is because what we call anger is because we identify with this body and this mind. There's a threat to the body and the mind. And so our body releases chemicals to protect ourselves. It's a natural biological reaction of the body. That if there's, 5 barking dogs, you need to, hit them or run away or something. And so when the brain senses a threat, it releases chemicals for protection. And the sensation those chemicals make in the body, we call anger. It gives us incredible, immediate strength. Now, if we mentally associate with those chemicals and say, I am angry, just think about that. I am. We cannot meditate on Krishna. And we will end up committing all kinds of sins and we'll end up going to hell. Krishna says that. Kumari Sakti wrote me a message. You'll have to remind me in another form. I'm not going to remember right now. In terms of karma, sinful reaction, how does nature work? We'll be discussing that today. It was rare to find people who obtain pure devotional service by sticking to austerities. We can obtain it by sticking to the austerities given by pure devotees. Yes, that's part of it. That's not everything. The happiness of becoming one with the Supreme. What is the name of Sri Swami's commentary on the Srimad Bhagavatam? I don't know. I don't remember the name of his commentary. Yeah, I don't remember what he called it. All right. Just give me a second here. And make sure I have the right PowerPoint. Yes. Hopefully we will. And Kosaya, I already answered the question about the verses. The verses are in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. They're not in the Nectar of Devotion, but they're in our verse memorization. Oops. Krishna Chaitanya. Got to push this button and that button and the other button. And I have to push them in the right order. Okay. Woohoo! We are here. So in our Bhakti Shastri class, we are studying just the eastern section of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which is the preface through chapter 19. The introduction of the Nectar Devotion is part of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. The preface is not. The preface is something just written by Srila Prabhupada, but the introduction is part of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And Bhakti means devotion or devotional service. Rasa, Prabhupada translates as mellow. He uses that because it was Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati's word, but it really is. Prabhupada himself says it's not a good translation, and I agree with Srila Prabhupada. It's not a good translation. Rasa means more like relationship. Amrita means not death, something that's eternal, nectar, Sindhu, ocean. Okay, we're going to go to the preface. The preface is one of my favorite parts of Srila Prabhupada's books, any of Srila Prabhupada's books. It's something that I've read, I don't know, dozens and dozens and dozens, maybe hundreds of times. I really like the preface of Nectar of Devotion. So Prabhupada gives us their history, describes its purpose of the Nectar of Devotion, explains bhakti rasa. He explains that everybody needs love, and he compares love to a beam of light. He gives the history of the book. And rasa, here is a very good definition of rasa. It's which Prabhupada gives in the preface. It's the pleasure we get from any activity. Rasa in Ayurveda means like a taste of something, a liquid taste. So Prabhupada talks about who is Rupa Goswami. So we call it Rupa Nuga. Rupa means Srila Rupa Goswami. Anuga means a follower. Prabhupada explains that our whole movement is under the supervision of Rupa Goswami. Well, sometimes I can't see chats when I'm sharing my screen. I do not know why. So Rupa Goswami is following Lord Chaitanya. I can see that there is something in the chat, but I can't see it. And we are following Rupa Goswami. And Srila Prabhupada is establishing in this preface that the Nectar Devotion is authorized scripture, at least for the Gaudiya Vaishnavas. Nectar Devotion would not be taken as authorized scripture for the Sri Vaishnavas or in the Rudra Sampradaya or the Vallabha Sampradaya. But for us who are followers of Lord Chaitanya, and Lord Chaitanya gave all this knowledge, ironically, not to Sanatana Goswami. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, all the topics of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu are taught to Sanatana Goswami. But as we accept Mahaprabhu as the Supreme Lord, and we accept Rupa Goswami as his chief associate. So therefore, this book that was taught by Lord Chaitanya and then taught by Rupa, we accept therefore as authorized scriptures. All right, somebody could read this, please.
Yes?
Yes, please.
Nectar of Devotion as authorized scripture. The present Krishna consciousness movement is also based on the authority of Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada. We are therefore generally known as Rupa Nugas, or followers in the footsteps of Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada. It is only for our guidance that Srila Rupa Goswami prepared his book Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which is now presented in the form of the Nectar of Devotion. Persons engaged in the Krishna consciousness movement may take advantage of this great literature and be very solidly situated in Krishna consciousness.
Thank you. All right. And here, Srila Prabhupada is really describing both bhakti and rasa. So bhakti meaning devotional service. And we'll see how important both these words are. Devotional service. So here Prabhupada is describing rasa. Every service, everything we do is a service. Every service has some attractive feature which drives the servitor progressively on and on. That force which drives the philanthropist, the householder, and the nationalist is called rasa, or a kind of mellow relationship whose taste is very sweet. So rasa is the relationship, but it's the enjoyment we're getting from the relationship. And it could be a relationship with objects, it could be a relationship with people, relationship with activities. But bhakti rasa is different from the ordinary rasa.
Hi, Krishna.
Yes.
So does that mean that bhakti rasa is like the drive that keeps us doing devotional service?
Yes, it should be.
Okay.
As we were talking about earlier, you know, we could be going for another kind of rasa that we're thinking is bhakti. That's possible. because all of the aspects of devotional rasa are also aspects of perverted rasa. So I could be superficially doing bhakti, but actually tasting some materialistic, perverted shadow of rasa. But there's symptoms of that.
Okay, thank you.
Like we discussed earlier, yeah. But if we have the symptoms that we're actually enjoying bhakti, then yes, that is supposed to be what's driving us. Yes. And make sure I talk about that when we talk about Vaidhi and Raganuga in the next class. Now, this is a very important point that Prabhupada makes. If someone could read this, please.
Yes, the nectar of devotion is not presented to condemn any way of materialistic life, but the attempt is to give information to religionists, philosophers, and people in general how to love Krishna. One may live without material discomfiture, but at the same time, he should learn the art of loving Krishna.
This is so important. I mean, it is true that one of the purposes of ISKCON is to teach its members a more natural way of life. At the same time, we're not saying that you can't live a life with electricity and, running water out of your tap and so forth. But love Krishna. It's not that you have to live, an Indian village life to attain bhakti. Okay, if somebody could read this, please.
The method
Hare
of
Krishna.
pouring. Sorry, go ahead. The method of pouring water on the root of a tree or supplying foodstuffs to the stomach is universally scientific and practical, as every one of us has experienced. Everyone knows well that when we eat something, or in other words, when we put foodstuffs in the stomach, the energy created by such action is immediately distributed throughout the whole body. Similarly, when we pour water on the root, the energy thus created is immediately distributed throughout the entirety of even the largest tree. It is not possible to water the tree. I can't read the bottom lines. It's like blocked by, It is not possible to water the tree part by part, nor is it possible to feed the different parts of the body separately.
Thank you. So this is the concept that if we take care of Krishna, if we serve Krishna first, then everything else is included. And I love this allegory, how to turn the one switch that will immediately brighten everything everywhere. And now Prabhupada talking about rasas, he says there's 12 kinds of rasas. And by renovating our relationship with Krishna in 5 primary rasas, renovating, that means it's already there. We're reawakening it. We're bringing out something that's already there. We can live eternally in full knowledge and bliss. So this is a picture of all 5 of the primary rasas. I think this is also an important statement that the Nectar Devotion is specifically presented for persons who are now engaged in the Krishna consciousness movement. Although we have distributed the Nectar Devotion to people out on the street. But I think the Nectar Devotion is probably pretty incomprehensible to most people who are out on the street. Okay, the introduction actually starts Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. It's not something that Srila Prabhupada wrote separately. So it's already, in the introduction, we're already getting to the first parts of Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So the summary of the introduction, there's a Mangalacharana, and there's a definition of pure devotional service. So Rupa Goswami, who's the author, he's invoking auspiciousness by having Krishna as the objective of the book, offering obeisances to the Lord, his Guru, and the Vaishnavas, benedictions, then the definition of pure devotional service, which is the thesis statement. So that's the verse we're memorizing this week. Anyabhilasita sunyam gyanakarma anavritam anukulana Krishna anushilanam bhakti utamam. And we're going to be studying that verse in the end. So the subjects of the Mangalacharana, description of the contents of the book, and the authoritative definition of pure devotional service. By the way, as you all know in your exams, and you've only got one more closed book exam, we always ask you to summarize what's being examined, and we put summaries in these presentations. So the Mangalacharana itself defines the book objective, allows the author to pay obeisances, and allows the reader to receive blessings. So the Mangalacharana describes the objective. What's the objective of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu? It's Krishna, who's Akila Ras Amrita Murti. Akila means all, Murti means embodiment, form. Ras Amrita. So Amrita, not death or nectar. Rasa is the relationship. And this is Vrindavan Krishna, that he is Akila Rasamrita Murti. He is the form of the taste of all relationships. So Akila Rasamrita Murti, Prasrimchara Ruchi Ruja Taraka Pali, Kalita Shama Lalito Radha Prayan Vidur Jayati. Let Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, be glorified. By virtue of his expanding attractive features, he subjugated the gopis named Tarika and Pali and absorbed the minds of Shama and Lalita. He is the most attractive lover of Srimati Radharani and is a reservoir of pleasure for devotees in all transcendental mellows. So these gopis, we have Radha's group, Swapaksha, her own group, Surid, her friends, Tatasta, those who are neutral, and Vipaksha, those who are apparently opposed to Radha. So Rupa Goswami is offering his respects to Krishna, who attracts all of the gopis from all of these groups. And then he offers his obeisances to Sanatana. Like they are like Makara, the king of the fishes, joyful in the ocean of rasa. They don't merge into the ocean like the impersonalists, but they are joyful in Krishna's ocean, and they are we were talking about enjoyment. And so they are experiencing great enjoyment. And Makara, which Prabhupada is translating as sharks, but Makara is actually another kind of creature. Krishna has Makara earrings. Makara is the carrier of Cupid, also the carrier of the Ganga.
Mataji, I have a question here.
Yes.
So in the last slide, you said those gopis' name, like we always hear the Ashtasakhi's name, but these gopis are, and just Lalita and Visakha are there, but other Ashtasakhis are not there, and we don't.
Oh, very nice question. So the Ashtasakhis that we have in Mayapur Dham, those are all in Radharani's Swapaksha. Those are Radharani's chief gopis in her group. So she has 8 chief gopis in her group. But the 8 principal gopis of Krishna are not those same gopis. The 8 principal gopis are Radharani and Chandravali. Then Radharani's 2 principal friends, Lalita and Vishaka. Chandravali's 2 principal friends, Padma and Saibhya. And then Radharani's the chief gopi in the group friendly to Radharani, which is Shamala, and the chief gopi in the group friendly to Chandravali, that's Bhadra. So those are the 8 chief gopis. Now there are different lists of 8 chief gopis. Sometimes there's a list of 10 chief gopis. And here Rupa Goswami is not actually listing the 8 chief gopis, but he's simply listing gopis who are in each of these categories. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you, Mataji. Can I get a reference from where we can see all those names, because it's very fascinating?
It's in the Bhagavatam. I mean, Prabhupada mentions that the 2 chief gopis are Radharani and Chandravali. He mentions that several places. I can't share my screen here and access the database. That doesn't work. Not when I'm sharing a PowerPoint. So you'll have to ask me when I'm not sharing this anymore. Otherwise I may forget.
Mother,
Yes.
on the same lines, I have one question here. Swapaksha is something I understand. That is with reference to Radharani. And when Vipaksha means someone who is not in favor of Radharani. Is that what it means?
That is correct.
I was also asking the same, what does it mean, the four of them, Swapascha, Suhrit, Tatastha external, and Suhrit friend.
Okay, I just explained it. Swapaksha is Radharani's own group. Surid are groups that are friendly to Radharani. Tatastha are groups that are neutral to Radharani. Vipaksha are groups that are opposed to Radharani.
Okay.
So with the relation to Vipaksha means when someone is not in coordination with Radharani, how is she a chief principal Gopi mother? I'm trying to understand that, because all the time I was thinking that we were like Raga.
Now, you could also look at this from another point of view. Like, let's say you're a follower of Chandravali, then this would be reversed. So then the Vipaksha becomes the Swapaksha, the Tatastha becomes the Surid becomes the Tatastha, and the Swapaksha becomes the Vipaksha. So let's say you're a Gopi in this group, then this group is the Swapaksha. And the people who are neutral to Radharani are your friends. The people who are Radharani's friends are neutral to you. And the people who are in Radharani's group are the people who are opposed to you.
Okay.
So Krishna this is very nicely explained. Rupa Goswami has a book called Ujjwala Nilamani. Ujjwala Nilamani is like Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, but it's specifically about those in the Madhurya or conjugal relationship with Krishna. So in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the parts we don't study in Bhakti Shastri, Rupa Goswami explains about the 5 primary rasas: neutrality, servitorship, friendship, parental, and conjugal. And he describes something about each of those in relationship, we'll see in a moment, to the different parts of rasa. But then Ujjwala Mani, he takes the conjugal relationship and he goes into it in great depth. And there he explains the different categories of gopis. Altogether, he delineates about 350 categories of gopis, but he says there's actually billions of categories. So Krishna as Akila Rasamrita Murti, that's the whole point. Krishna is Akila Rasamrita Murti. He enjoys all kinds of relationships. So Krishna likes his girls in all different moods.
And mother, one question. So Viraja falls into Vipaksha of Radharani because she cursed her. Is that how I can see?
They have a different mood. They have an opposite mood.
So she falls into Vipaksha then.
Who?
Viraja.
Viraja. I'm actually not sure which category she's in. I know I'm pretty sure it's in the Garuda Purana where Viraja with Krishna has her own Ras Lila, where she's in the center.
Yeah. So when I was seeing this, I was just trying to correlate, okay, how can someone be...
Because they have a different mood. So Radharani has, she has a mood of being very argumentative with Krishna and actually kind of domineering with Krishna. And those who are opposite to her have a mood of more submission to Krishna.
Oh, okay. I thought the whole point was the highest mood was everybody is serving Krishna. Only thing is the mood is different. That's what you meant.
Yeah, and so they appear to be in opposition to each other.
Okay. Gotcha.
We see this to some extent even in our devotee society on this planet. So, we all want to serve Lord Chaitanya, we all want to serve Srila Prabhupada, but we may want to serve Srila Prabhupada in ways that appear to oppose each other. So somebody wants everyone to move out into a farm and, pull our water out of a well. And somebody else wants to go in the big cities and use computers. And so those things may appear to be opposing each other. But everybody's trying to please Srila Prabhupada. And we might even argue with each other about it.
Wonderfully explained, Mother. Thank you.
Is that okay?
Yes, that's perfect.
You know, many years ago, I was at a playground and there was one gentleman there with his daughter. And he was talking to me that this daughter was from a previous marriage. And he said, my first wife, he said, was what they call a drama queen. You've heard that expression?
Yeah, my daughter does that a lot.
So very emotional and very emotionally demonstrative. So he said, he told me, he said, I divorced my first wife because it was exhausting, that she was this drama queen and it was always exhausting. He said, now my second wife, he said, she's the opposite, but she can be boring. Right? So, you know, in a monogamous society, the man has to choose between the wife that's so dramatic that she's exhausting and the wife that's so undramatic that she's boring. But Krishna gets to have both. Krishna gets to have a dramatic wife and a more sedate wife. You know, so among all of his wives and all of his gopis, they have different natures, they have different personalities. And in some cases, their personalities are opposed to each other. So,
quick question, Mother, or maybe,
yes.
sorry.
No, don't be sorry. Yes.
In question whether envy to each other with Radha, not with Chandravali, and there's no that kind of.
I'm sorry, your internet got funny. Can you ask that again?
Yeah, my internet is funny. So I'll repeat. So in terms of the Vipaksha and with Chandravali, so the group of Vipaksha, they don't have, they actually don't have any envy towards Radharani that she, you know, when Krishna spends time with her, there is actually, do they work together? Because they, you know, they can't be.
Well, they don't have any
I don't know.
malice.
Is there competition or is there?
Oh, there's a lot
any
of
kind
competition. And Krishna likes that. When Krishna's not around, they're cooperative. When Krishna's around, they're competitive.
Okay.
Sometimes they're cooperative when Krishna's around, but that's unusual. Like in the Ras Leela, they're cooperative even though Krishna's around. But that's unusual. Generally, if Krishna's around, they're competitive. But they can be friendly. I mean, there's an instance in the Ananda Vrindavan Champu that when Krishna's going to bed at night, Radharani's putting betel nuts in Krishna's mouth and Lalita and Chandravali are massaging Krishna's feet. Or during the holy festival, Radharani is asking Chandravali to put colors all over Madhu Mangal. But then what happens is Radharani sort of goes off to the side and Krishna's just doing holy with Chandravali and her friends. And then he goes and plays holy with Radharani and her friends. There's something there that is the precursor of envy, but it's playful. It's not malicious.
Okay.
And it's based on, I mean, what Rupa Goswami explains in Ujjwala Nilamani is that Radharani will say about Chandravali, she doesn't know how to please Krishna. Because when Krishna is angry with her, she immediately forgives him. And that's not good. Krishna doesn't like that. And Chandravali says that Radharani doesn't know how to please Krishna because when she's angry with Krishna and Krishna falls at her feet, she still doesn't forgive him. So Chandravali thinks that Radharani doesn't know how to please Krishna, and Radharani thinks that Chandravali doesn't know how to please Krishna. Of course, they're both pleasing Krishna, just in different ways. You know, those of us who have more than one child, you know, we have more than one child, we may have a very different relationship with each of our children, even though it's all pleasing.
Thank you.
I mean, one reason Rupa Goswami is giving these different gopis is because he's saying Akila Rasa Mritamurti. Krishna is the form of all rasas. So if he's only giving Radharani's group, then that's not going to encompass all of the rasas, even among the conjugal relationships.
Hare Krishna Mataji, I have a small question on that. Like, if we follow Rupa Goswami, then we are coming under the category of, we are following the footsteps of Radharani. Similarly, somebody, they are following, they wish to follow Chandravali. Is there something, some other sampradaya is there in this world?
That's a very good question. Chandravali appears in Chaitanya Lila as, what's his name? Ramachandra Kaviraj, I think. So Chandravali is also there in Chaitanya Lila. And there are followers of Rupa Goswami. Followers of Rupa Goswami can mean on two levels. One can mean we're a follower of Rupa Goswami, the man who's a disciple of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Rupa Goswami is talking about all of the rasas and all of the relationships. So one can be in any relationship, and even a follower of Chandravali or a follower of Taraka, whatever, and still be a follower of Rupa Goswami. If we're going to talk about Rupa Manjari, then that depends. I mean, even if you're a cowherd boy, you may not be a follower of Rupa Manjari. And we definitely have devotees of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, especially a lot of the devotees of Nityananda, who are cowherd boys. And we have devotees who are in parental rasa. Srila Prabhupada told Yamuna, he said, you're a follower of Mother Yasoda. So those people are not followers exactly of Rupa Manjari. Excellent, excellent question. And we have a lot to cover. All right, I'll make sure that we can take care of this. So Rupa Goswami is comparing the Gyanis and the Karmis to volcanoes under the ocean that they can't really accomplish much. And he wants this book to defeat them. All right, so here's indicative of Srila Prabhupada's mood. Can somebody read this, please?
The author of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Srila Rupa Goswami, very humbly submits that he is just trying to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. Although he humbly thinks himself unfit for this work, that should be the attitude of all preachers of the Krishna consciousness movement, following in the footsteps of Srila Rupa Goswami. We should never think of ourselves as great preachers, but should always consider that we are simply instrumental to the previous acharyas, and simply by following in their footsteps, we may be able to do something for the benefit of suffering humanity.
Thank you. So now we've finished going over the Mangalacharana, and now we're going to look at the structure of the Nectar of Devotion, or Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And Sindhu, it's an ocean, and just like there's the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean, so there's here Rupa Goswami is giving us an Eastern Ocean, Western Ocean, Northern and Southern Ocean. In our Bhakti Shastri, we only study the Eastern Ocean. And so that chapters 1 through 19 is the Eastern Ocean. So the eastern side, what we're going to be studying in Bhakti Shastri, an overview of devotion, devotional service and practice, in ecstasy and in love of God. On the southern side are the 5 things that make up rasa. When we talk about what do we mean by rasa. So we mean the vibhava, what stimulates a relationship. So let's think about this materially. So let's say I have a relationship or friendship with someone. The vibhava would be, I see my friend. I think about my friend. I'm hanging out with a bunch of people who are all friends with my friend. I, do something fun with my friend. Anubhava is the intentional things I do to nourish that relationship. I buy my friend a gift. I take my friend out to lunch. I joke with my friend. Satvika bhava are automatic things. I'm not, I smile, I laugh, I'm not planning to do that. It just happens. But those things nourish my relationship. Vyabhitari bhav, those are transitory emotions. So maybe, with my friends, sometimes we're laughing. Maybe sometimes we're going on a scary amusement park ride. Maybe sometimes we're watching an incredible sunrise together. So then we may have other emotions in our relationship. And staibhav is the friendship itself, that feeling of friendship. So sometimes we use the word rasa as synonymous with staibhav. We're saying there's the rasa of friendship, the rasa of conjugal, but really rasa involves all 5 of these. So in the southern side, which we do not study in Bhakti Shastri, is a study of all of these. Then in the western side is the study of the primary rasas. These are actually the primary staibhavs of rasa. And on the northern side are the secondary rasas. These again are staibhavs. And we do not study this in the Bhakti Shastri course. All right, just in the eastern side. So the general description of bhakti is in the introduction in chapter 1. Bhakti in practice is in chapters 2 to 16. Bhakti in ecstasy or in bhava is in chapters 17 to 18, and in prema or love is in chapter 19. So this is the overview of the eastern side, how it is organized. And each of these are considered waves. So we're in the Eastern Ocean and they're each considered waves. And here Prabhupada is talking about the
What does
waves.
Veda mean?
What does what?
Veda, B-H-E-D-R-A.
Varieties.
Ah.
Okay, so here we have the different waves. And Prabhupada's just repeating the same thing using the word waves. All right, now we're coming to the thesis statement for the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And as you noted, Prabhupada does not quote the Sanskrit of this verse in Nectar of Devotion, but he's explaining it. Anyabilasi tashunyam gyanakarma anavritam anukulena Krishna nushilanam bhaktir uttamam. All right, so then here Prabhupada is giving the definition. So Prabhupada's giving the verse in English. When first-class devotional service develops, one must be devoid of all material desires, knowledge obtained by monistic philosophy, and fruit of action. The devotee must constantly serve Krishna favorably as Krishna desires. That Prabhupada is giving the translation of this verse. All right, now we're going to discuss it. This Swarup Lakshana means the essential characteristics of pure devotional service. Tatastha Lakshana is the marginal characteristics of pure devotional service. So what's essential and what's marginal? Now, pure devotional service means from the beginning. This, we're not talking about prema here. We're talking about even for the beginner. Okay, if we take this Sanskrit verse, the Swarup Lakshana are the words Anukulyena, Krishna, and Anushilanam. The marginal characteristics are Anyabilasita Shunyam and Gyanakarma, Anavritam. So let's look at each of these. Krishna. And Prabhupada says here, when we refer to Krishna, we refer to any of his expansions. So pure devotional service can be done for Nrsingadev, can be done for Balaram. Okay, that's just mean Krishna. Somebody needs to mute themselves. Right. So Krishna, what about loving anybody else? So because Krishna includes everything and everyone, when we engage them in Krishna service and when we work with people in Krishna service, they are also included. But Krishna is the target. So the ultimate end has to be Krishna. So here Prabhupada is talking about philosophical advancement is favorable if it's aiming at Krishna, not if it's aiming at impersonalism. Okay, Anushilanam. So Shilana means action, devotional service, devotional service. So if you love someone, you do something for them. And this is body, mind, and words. Shilanam means body, mind, and words. So there's pravriti, things we do with our body, mind, and words, and nivriti, things we don't do with our body, mind, and words. And we'll be looking at that more in chapter 6 onward. What are the things we do? For example, we chant. What are the things we don't do? We don't offend devotees. So bhakti has things we do with our body, things we do with our mind, things we do with our words, and things we don't do with our body, things we don't do with our mind, things we don't do with our words. All right, now a number of you had questions about this. Can someone read this, please?
The connection. Go ahead, Taji.
I don't know. I also asked the same question. I think maybe.
That's all right. Just somebody read it.
Okay. The connection with the spiritual master is called initiation. From the date of initiation by the spiritual master, the connection between Krishna and a person cultivating Krishna consciousness is established. Without initiation by a bona fide spiritual master, the actual connection with Krishna consciousness is never performed.
Quite a heavy statement. And so we have this question, which many of you asked. So my answer to this is very simple. Initiation, formal initiation is compared to formally enrolling in a university, or is compared to getting married. So before you formally enroll in a university, you can take some classes. You can learn things in the classes. You have some relationship with the professors, but nobody's making a commitment. There's no professor in the university that has made a commitment to you that they're going to help you to get your degree. And you haven't made a commitment that you are going to follow the rules of the university to get your degree. Once you are formally enrolled, then every aspect of the university is open to you, not only in the department of your studies, but in all the departments, in the library and so forth and so on. You have a firm relationship. And as long as you follow the rules of the university, you will get your degree. And they're promising you that. They're saying you'll get, but if you're just sitting in on classes, there's something you're learning. It's not like you're not learning. Or with a marriage. You know, we've all, I'm sure, known or been to, known of or heard of or been to weddings where everything was canceled and they didn't get married. I remember going to a wedding like that, where the two families got into a big argument on the day of the wedding and the whole wedding was canceled. So until the wedding actually takes place, you know, I mean, I was just talking to this friend of mine who she was with a guy for 3.5 years and they had their wedding planned, and unfortunately, she made the decision to have relations with the man before they were actually married. And once he found out she was expecting a child, he completely walked away from her. So, you know, even though they had a relationship for so long and they even produced a child together, because they weren't married, he was like, I have nothing to do with you and I'm not going to take care of you. And so, you know, it's very tragic. So it's like that. You know, once you're married, then this is your father-in-law, your mother-in-law, your sisters-in-law, your brother-in-law. You become part of the family. Before that time, you have some relationship, but you're not part of the family. So it's something like that. Is there devotional service happening before initiation? Yes, definitely. But the commitment isn't there. And now sometimes Prabhupada would say that initiation is just a formality to recognize the commitment that's already there. So that can also be the case. All right, Anushilanam. So we have not only Shilanam, but Anushilanam. So Anu means younger. It also means to follow. So this is where Prabhupada's talking about getting initiation. That it's not just activities, but activities that's following. We're following Krishna. We're following the gurus. We're following the acharyas. And he makes the point that these activities are under the internal energy. They're not material activities. Anukulena. That means
what does Shilanam mean?
Activities. Anukulena. So anukulena means they're pleasing. They're pleasing. So we could say, well, Kamsa's fighting with Krishna pleased him, and Yasoda tying him up did not please him. So why is it Yasoda's a devotee and Kamsa is not? Because Kamsa had no intention of pleasing Krishna and Yasoda did. So ideally, we both intend to please Krishna and Krishna is pleased. But here we see if our intention is to please Krishna, and if we are following our acharyas with the intention of pleasing Krishna, that is considered favorable. That is considered favorable. We want a favorable intention, activity that intentionally pleases Krishna. So in other words, it shouldn't be mechanical and thoughtless, and it should be following the acharyas, even though maybe we're going to tie up Krishna and he'll get angry with us. But still, that is considered devotion because we're following the acharyas, trying to please Krishna. Okay, and not having an ulterior motive. Anya bilasita shunyam. Shunyam means void. Anya, other. Abilasa, desire. So what this means is wanting, not just wanting to please Krishna, but wanting to please Krishna only for Krishna's pleasure. Not wanting to please Krishna because then he'll give me money, then he'll give me a good grade on my exam. That's not pure bhakti. So it's the purification of desire, developing a spiritual desire to please Krishna. Anavritam. So this is giving up karma, gyan, and yoga. We have karma and gyan and yoga in bhakti. Just hearing Prabhupada's class on Nectar of Devotion, where he was saying there's karma, gyan, and yoga in bhakti, but they don't overshadow bhakti. We don't make them more important than bhakti. We don't make bhakti dependent on them. So jnana karma anavritam. Jnana karma adi means yoga, anything else. So not covered by gyan. We don't cover bhakti with spiritual knowledge that's not part of bhakti. So we can use gyan, we can use knowledge of matter and spirit for the sake of getting detached from things that interfere with bhakti. And we should, in fact. Krishna's telling us as part of bhakti, we have to be free from attachment and aversion. It's actually one of the angas of bhakti. So not covered by ordinary karma. So we can do actions. It's not that we just sit still, but our actions are actions that are part of bhakti. Okay, adi anavritam, anything that's not part of devotional service. So what about activities or knowledge that's not a part of bhakti, but are necessary to exist in this world, as long as they don't overshadow bhakti? So the example is Lord Chaitanya does Pinda in Gaya for his father's funeral. Okay, the main qualities that make something pure devotional service. Anukulena, Krishna should get pleasure from it, or at least the devotee's attitude towards Krishna should be favorable, even if Krishna gets angry about it. Krishna, it should be for Krishna or his expansions, his paraphernalia and abode, his pure devotees. Anu Shilanam, activities of mind, body, and words that follows the guru, that follows the sadhus. Okay, secondary characteristics, anyavilasita sunyam, not having other material desires, approaching Krishna just to please Krishna, not approaching Krishna to get money or fame. Jnana karma anavritam. So there's supposed to be no material desires. We can have jnana, karma, and yoga and so forth, but they shouldn't cover our bhakti. And we shouldn't think they're superior to bhakti. They shouldn't be covering our bhakti. They can be there. And a lot of them are part of bhakti. There's yoga that's part of bhakti. There's jnana that's part of bhakti. There's karma that's part of bhakti, but not covering bhakti and not thinking that that bhakti is dependent on them. They're dependent on bhakti. Another verse that defines pure devotional service that Rupa Goswami gives, in addition to Anya Bilasita Shunyam, is Sarvapadi Vinir Muktanta Partena Nirmala Rishikesha Rishikena Sevana Bhakti Vichite. It's another way to define pure devotional service. And Prabhupada explains it here, if someone could read that.
Srila Rupa Goswami has also quoted a definition from the Narada Pancharatra as follows. One should be free from all material designations, and by Krishna consciousness must be cleansed of all material contamination. He should be restored to his pure identity, in which he engages his senses in the service of the proprietor of the senses. So when our senses are engaged for actual proprietor of the senses, that is called devotional service. In our conditional state, our senses are engaged in serving these bodily demands. When the same senses are engaged in executing the order of Krishna, our activities are called bhakti.
Thank you. Now, please keep in mind, and we're going to be describing this more in a second, that this definition of pure devotional service does not apply to someone who is pure. It can apply to someone who's impure, but engaged in pure devotional service. And that's what we're going to see in chapter 1. The 6 characteristics. Yes.
So, quick question. You were trying to explain that verse in terms of like the primary and secondary characteristics.
Correct.
I don't quite understand why are we doing it like that, or is there a
Because our
reason
acharyas,
to
because our
break it up?
acharyas have described it like that.
Okay. And so, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
So our acharyas have described that the main characteristics, if we're going to say, are you engaged in pure devotional service? So the most important characteristics of saying, are you engaged in pure devotional service, is it's for Krishna. It's not for Durga Devi. It's not for your dog. It's for Krishna. You're doing activities of body, mind, and words for Krishna, following the great acharyas and guru, and your intention is to please Krishna. So that's the most important thing. If you're going to say, how do I know I'm doing pure devotional service? Is it for Krishna? Does it involve activity of the body, mind, and words? Either things to do or not to do. Are those activity of the body, mind, and words following acharyas, great person? Is my intention to please Krishna just for Krishna's pleasure? So that's the most important thing as to whether or not it's pure devotional service. Then other things that are secondary are, you want to please Krishna just to please Krishna. So when we say you want to please Krishna anukuyena, but you want to please Krishna just to please Krishna. You don't want to please Krishna because you want Krishna to do this or that for you. And activities, knowledge, yoga are helping in your bhakti, but they're subordinate. So if you're trying to be a good person in the world, you're trying to be a good wife and a good daughter and a good mother and a good bank teller or whatever, that's subordinate to your bhakti. You don't think you're going to become liberated by being a good person in the world. When we're becoming detached from fame and infamy and honor and dishonor, we're doing that to please Krishna. So I'm a good wife to please Krishna. I'm becoming detached from heat and cold and honor and dishonor to please Krishna. I'm doing meditation on the Gayatri mantra to please Krishna. I'm not thinking, well, Krishna. I'm not thinking I'm doing my meditation to become, a great yogi, and I'm not thinking my karma gyan or yoga is going to liberate me. So those are the secondary characteristics. Is that all right?
Thank you so much.
Yes,
Yes, thank you.
so much welcome.
I have a
Hare
quick
Krishna
question.
Mataji.
I have a question.
Okay, and we still have chapter 1 to do, and we only have 12 minutes. Yes.
Actually, the pure devotional service means only to Krishna. The other forms of Krishna also can be taken into consideration in this case, or?
There we go. So what's the answer?
Yeah, it is.
What's the answer? What's the answer?
Thank you.
Okay, got it?
I have a quick question, Prabhu.
Yes.
So we were hearing about like Tathast Lakshana. So I have heard one should have a Swarup Siddhi. So is this knowing about our Tathast Lakshana, or this is different?
Okay, Tatastha Lakshana here, we're talking about the marginal characteristics of the definition of pure devotional service. We're not talking about the identity of the jiva who's in the Tatastha Shakti.
Okay.
Tatastha just means marginal. So there's a Tatastha Shakti that refers to the jiva, but here we're giving a definition of a word, pure devotional service. What does we mean, pure devotional service? What does that mean? Uttam Bhakti, what does it mean? And we say there's primary definition and there's a marginal definition. So Tatastha there means the marginal dictionary definition of pure devotional service. It's absolutely nothing to do with the fact that the jivas are also marginal. Just like we talked about groups of gopis that are marginal to Radharani, but that has nothing to do with the fact that the jiva is Tatastha. Okay? Is that clear?
Yeah, same question.
Yes, Prabhu.
Is that now clear?
Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's like marginal secondary. So you can use the word secondary in English to mean so many things. Right?
So it's a secondary, right? The marginal means.
Tatasta here means the secondary characteristics of pure devotional service.
Okay.
It's nothing to do with that word is also used to describe Krishna Shaktis. It's
It's a
not.
living entity, right?
No relationship.
In that one. Okay.
Nothing to do with it. Absolutely, totally, 100%, nothing to do with it.
Okay. This is different. Thank you.
Yeah, like I could have red shoes and there could be a red sunset, but they have nothing to do with each other just because I'm using the word red for both of them. Okay, is that everybody clear on that?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay, so when we say, yeah, just the same term is used for, we're talking about completely different. Okay, good. I'm glad that was asked. Okay, now what are the characteristics? So we talked about this with the questions at the beginning. How do I know? How do I know if I'm really trying to please Krishna and working under? How do I know? What are the symptoms? What are the symptoms? So this is a summary of chapter 1, the 6 symptoms of pure devotion, and that the devotees don't want liberation. So these are the 6 symptoms. Relief from suffering, kleshagni, all auspiciousness, shubhada, derides even liberation, moksha laguta krit, extremely rare, surdurlabha, incalculable bliss, sandra anamba, vishet atma. I know a devotee named Sandra Ananda. And it attracts Krishna, Sri Krishna Karshini. All right, so we're going to look at Klesha Agni. How does devotional service get rid of suffering? So what causes suffering? Our bad karma, our reactions to our sins. Why do we do sins? We have sinful desires, bija. Why do we have sinful desires? Because I'm identifying with this body. All right, so it starts with ignorance, ahankar. I think I'm this body, I think I'm this identity, therefore I have sinful desires, therefore I do sinful actions, I get reactions, I get suffering. And Prabhupada says devotional service is Klesh Agni even for beginners. So we should be getting free from suffering in the beginning of our Krishna consciousness. That doesn't mean my arm doesn't get broken. It doesn't mean people will never insult me. It means I do not experience it as suffering. So avidya, I am, I enjoy, I want, I hate, I fear, I destroy, I am a body, desires, and I act. So as long as we think I'm this body, I'm this mind, then I will have this attachment and aversion, which is what causes all my experience of suffering. And Prabhupada gives this example that a fire in a forest, the snakes can't get away. So these snakes of ignorance are killed immediately by actual Krishna consciousness. So again, I have this ignorance. I think on this body. From that, I have sinful desires. From that, I have to do sinful actions. I have unmanifested reactions, which again give me a sinful disposition, which feed my sinful desires and also gives me reactions and suffering. Here's another way to look at it. Avidya gives me sinful reactions, sinful act, unmanifest, sinful inclination, manifest, and suffering. This is the problem. And getting rid of this can be done in the beginning of devotional service. This detachment from the pleasure and pain of the body, this detachment from I like, I hate, I want, I do not want. There's two types of reaction, manifest and unmanifest. So I'm sick now, that's manifest. I have a bacteria or a virus, but I'm not sick yet, that's unmanifest. Unmanifest reaction intensifies material desires. So it's not yet manifested, and gradually it manifests. It can happen over many births. All right, how do we know the nectar devotion is authorized? We're going to come up to this again and again and again and again and again. That Rupa Goswami backs up what he's saying with scripture. He's always backing up what he's saying with scripture. Throughout the nectar of devotion, particularly the Bhagavatam, he's always backing up what he says with scriptures. So how does bhakti destroy suffering? So he gives evidences of the unmanifest reactions, the manifest reactions, sinful desires, ignorance. He gives examples from the Shastra on how bhakti destroys suffering at each of these stages. Okay, that was the first one, Vaishagni. Second symptom of pure devotional service is Shubhada. And there's 4 aspects of Shubhada. It attracts and benefits everyone, it gives saintly qualities, and it gives superior happiness. So it attracts and benefits everyone. It gives everyone real welfare, unlike something like the United Nations, which is on the bodily platform. It can benefit everyone. It gives saintly qualities. And we see that people, even they have a lot of education, they have a big position, they may not have saintly qualities because they don't give up their false identification. And so they're still selfish. Shubhada, superior happiness. So there's happiness from objects of our senses, from liberation, and from devotional service. And this is what we talked about in the initial questions, that happiness in devotional service includes the happiness of liberation. It even includes the happiness of sense gratification. And it is eternal. Even the happiness of liberation appears trivial. Moksha laguta krit. It makes the happiness of moksha insignificant. It's rare and difficult to obtain. We cannot obtain it by our own efforts. We had some nice questions on this, and Krishna does not easily grant it. So we might say, well, if we can't obtain bhakti by our own efforts, why should we work so hard in Krishna consciousness? So our efforts cannot cause bhakti, but they can attract Krishna's mercy by showing our sincerity. And they can purify our heart and make it a receptacle capable of holding Krishna's mercy. This is important, folks. Our activities in bhakti, we're not the doer. It's not a mechanical process. I'm going to chant, 180 rounds and offer 5,000 sticks of incense and circumambulate the temple 1,000 times, and I will create my liberation in my bhakti. No. I do these activities to please Krishna, and I say, Krishna, I actually want your mercy. I really want your mercy. And I'm getting myself prepared to receive it. Like, before you meet some big important person, you'll take a shower and put on nice clean clothes. Why doesn't Krishna give it so easily? Because it has the power to control him. He's controlled by love, and he doesn't want any nonsense rascal like me controlling him. Incalculable bliss, Sandra Nanda Visesh Atma, cannot even be described. And we can say the happiness of sadhana bhakti is superior to all other happiness. Bhava bhakti derides liberation, and prema bhakti is incalculable. It attracts Krishna, the final quality, it attracts Krishna. He's attracted by his own internal potency. And Prabhupada mentions Radharani because devotional service emanates from her. So because it emanates from her, therefore it attracts Krishna. And we made it by 10:30, which is amazing. I did not think that was going to happen. I was like, how are we going to make it by 10:30? Okay, that was a lot to try to cover in that amount of time. We could easily spend a week talking about Anyabilasita Sunyam Gyanakana Anavatam Anuguli Krishna. We could spend a week talking about each of those 6 symptoms of bhakti. Oh, okay, now I can see the chats. For some reason, sometimes when I'm doing a PowerPoint, the Zoom will not let me open a chat. Okay, so let's see what we have here. A reference where the Lord exhibited anger as a rasa. Yeah, with Jagai and Madai. Ram's toward the ocean. Yeah, excellent. But you're not Ram and you're not Lord Chaitanya, so be careful. But we're talking about when the devotees experience anger as a rasa would be towards like Kaliya, towards Kamsa, towards Shishupal. Or, the gopis get angry at Krishna because he shows up late. Yeah. Banishment of Mukunda, yeah. When Krishna gives bhakti to us means he's becoming the servant of the spirit soul. How is this to see with the other gopis? Does it mean everyone who is granted bhakti is in the same level as Srimati Radharani? Don't think about material levels like that. But Prabhupada says Krishna is embracing Radharani and he's also embracing the cow. That there's equality. Okay, we are doing our break on time, just 1 minute late. I'm so proud of myself. Yay, me. Get this class on time.
Thank you for bearing our torture, Mother.
Oh, that's not, Prabhu, this is my great happiness. My
Thank
great,
you very much, Mataji.
great happiness.
Excellent answers. I got
Yes.
really nice answers.
Thank
from
you. It's
I
very
mean,
deep. Thank
if
you.
I didn't get great happiness from doing it, I wouldn't do it.
Especially that one slide today when you were explaining about the principal gopis, the one who are
I didn't expect so many questions on that one.
because that was really new to me. I never thought when I was going through the chapter, I was feeling like, okay, this is really going very pure and all, and what kind of questions I can, squeeze out of it.
Yeah, well, Prabhupada doesn't talk so much. I mean, later in the, oops. Am I still online?
Yes, you are.
Okay, I just lost power. I may have to go to I may get kicked off. It's possible that this meeting may get cut off and I may have to go on through my own, my other system. So if you come back and this is, I may have to restart the meeting and have you rejoin because we've lost power and that may affect the temple's modem. I have my own backup modem specifically if this kind of thing happens. All right, so take a break, 15 minutes, which means we'll come back at 10:47 Eastern time, 2 minutes later. So take a full 15 minutes. And as I say, if you try to come back and we're not here, then just I'll have shut it down and I'll have reopened it. Hare Krishna. Okay, looks like my power went back on and it looks like I'm online. Just do a quick check online. Yes. All right. So we're doing now chapters 2 and 3. Your questions on chapters 2 and 3. Some of you have not put in your questions yet. It's good if you have them like ready and you just copy paste them in. Okay, let's go through these. Definition of sadhana bhakti. What is it? It's practicing bhakti. And it awakens the innate bhakti within us. Sadhana bhakti. It's the same as abhyas yoga in Bhagavad Gita 12:9. It's a practice for practicing. And we'll discuss what does that mean. No one can take the devotional service unless he's had some previous life. Is that like someone taking birth in devotee family? How to see if some people not born in devotee family initially, later stages, they become devotees? Are they encountering for first time? In other words, people don't generally become serious about bhakti in one lifetime. It generally takes more than one lifetime before a person becomes serious. But there can be exceptions. By the mercy of a devotee, one could become serious in one lifetime. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to be born in a family of devotees. That's not necessarily the case. But generally, it means that we began, usually it's a slow process over many lives. Some people go to demigods, to the position of a jnani or wise man without being available. Okay. Also supreme. Are they neophytes? So if I'm going to Krishna and others, I haven't really started sadhana bhakti because I'm covering my bhakti with gyan. It depends. If I'm going to the demigods to help me with my bhakti, that's fine. The gopis do that. But if I'm, Krishna and, then I'm not anyavilasita sanyani jnana karma anavrita. So they're doing bhakti, but not pure bhakti. Devotional service is easier for those who have a natural taste for understanding the books than for those who are accustomed to mental speculation. Is it due to our previous karma? Yeah, there are previous samskaras. Karma is related to samskaras. Why does Srila Prabhupada say meditating on the four-handed or two-handed form is the same, but in Bhagavad Gita 18? Well, we discussed this already, comparing that purport in Bhagavad Gita 18. I can't remember where, 8. I can't remember where it is. Something. That's in Bhagavad Gita 8. Something. Yeah, 8:14. Bhagavad Gita 8:14 and 1865. So in 8:14, he says you can fix your mind on any incarnation of Krishna. And 1865, he says only Krishna. We discussed that a whole lot when we were discussing chapter 8 and chapter 18 of the Bhagavad Gita. That pure devotional service can be done for any form of the Lord, However, our advice following Rupa Goswami and our advice following Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is to fix one's mind just on Krishna. All right, yes, very good question. I'm skipped one, but that was right. I'll go to this one and I'll jump back. Can you please elaborate on what pious activity actually means? Prabhupada says no one can come to devotional service without becoming pious. But I often see that devotional service helps people become more pious. It certainly does. What we mean there is having done some unknowing devotional service for Krishna. Because Krishna has one verse in the Bhagavad Gita that even if you're the most sinful of all sinners, you can still come to me. And then he has another verse that says, so generally, unless someone has some pious background, Prabhupada says, like if you don't have any pious background and you're in difficulty, then you'll become an atheist. If you have pious background and you're in difficulty, you're surrendered to Krishna. But even people who are very impious can surrender to Krishna. Is it possible we got the mercy of a pure devotee in a different lifetime that we came to Krishna in this life? Or is it mercy in this life? And how do we know? What does it matter? You got it now, just take it now. What does it matter? Maybe you got it in another lifetime too. That's all right. We'll work with now. Most of us have some evidence that we're not just starting our bhakti in this life. The vast majority of devotees I know have some pretty strong evidence that they had some previous lifetime connection with Krishna consciousness. Is the wise neophyte considered to have no motives? Almost. Yes, the wise neophyte is considered to have, practically speaking, no motives. Yes, we have this conundrum about, do you need to be pious in the beginning or do you not need to be pious? And we have, what is it in the Bhagavad Gita? Even if you are the most sinful of all sinners, right? Let's find that. So even if you are considered to be the most sinful of all sinners, 436, when you are situated in the boat of transcendental knowledge, you will be able to cross over the ocean of misery. So that's 436, that you can start off being the most sinful of all sinners. And then in chapter 7, is persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, are free from the dualities of delusion, and they engage myself in my service with determination. So we have, you can come to bhakti from a sinful background or from a pious background. But generally speaking, people do not come directly from a sinful background to bhakti. It happens. Does neophyte include demigod worshippers? No. That's not pure devotional service, because pure devotional service has to be for Krishna. Mahalakshmi asked the question. Always wonder when I teach this, if anyone's going to ask the question. When did it start, right? That's your question. If it had to start in a previous life, well, when does it start? If in any lifetime you take up bhakti, you say, it had to start in a previous life. When did it start? Yes. I understand this to mean that the serious practitioners of bhakti have started in previous lives. We see a lot of people who take up bhakti, but not seriously. It seems that generally speaking, it takes more than one life before one decides to take up bhakti seriously. It seems that is generally the case. If we're taking up bhakti seriously in this life, and you are, so stop making funny faces. Sorry, I know Mahalakshmi very well, so I can tease her like that. She won't be offended. I hope she won't be offended. She's like, oh, I'm not taking up bhakti seriously. I know you. I know that's what you were thinking. You could read your mind. You are taking up bhakti seriously, my dear. If you're not taking up bhakti seriously, then nobody is. So if we're taking up bhakti seriously in this lifetime, then we can understand that most likely we had a prior life connection. And again, I was at this meeting, my God, it seems like a century ago. It was last year in February, with COVID, it seems like it was another yuga. Anyway, and before at the beginning of the meeting, the facilitator asked us to go around and talk about how we decided to join ISKCON. And at the end, he said every story had some indication that there was something going on from another life, some attraction from another life. And that's generally the case. If you ask people, how did you take up Krishna consciousness? There's usually something there, some attraction. And the stories are amazing, right? Shiva Ramaraj talks about how when he first read Krishna book, the stories just seemed really familiar to him. He said he went to his mother and said, "Did you tell me these stories when I was a child?" And she's like, no, I've never heard of them. He said, "I'm sure I've heard them." I mean, I had that experience when I read Bhagavad Gita. It's like, I've read this book before. I couldn't make heads or tails out of the names. Like, I didn't even know how to pronounce all the names. It took me 2 years to understand what was going on in the Mahabharata that led to the Bhagavad Gita. Like, who are these people? Who's Bhishma and Duryodhana? What do I do with the H after the D? It's like to figure that out. But my initial response to reading the Bhagavad Gita was, I've read this before. I know this, a sense of familiarity. And I mean, it may not be Vaishnava. One can, like, I have a god sister who actually remembers her last life as a Catholic priest. So it may not necessarily be a Vaishnava or a Gaudiya Vaishnava. All right. How do we understand the explanation of Brahmana who was born out of the head of the Lord? How does his business to preach? So Srinath, what are you asking here? You're asking about eating?
Yeah, Prabhu. So we hear like Brahmana is born out of head of Vishnu.
Can you turn on your video so I'm not just talking to a black rectangle?
Somehow I have tried to update my drivers, everything, but
Okay,
it is
all right.
not
That's all right.
compatible with
I'll
Zoom
talk to a
meetings.
black rectangle. Anyway,
Sorry
go on.
about that.
No problem.
So, so my question is, if Brahmanas are considered as like this is in Bhagavad Gita also Krishna says, like
Yes,
if your bhakti stops, you are not able to complete. I give you birth as a Brahmana or as a wealthy person.
right.
And so now here the question is like Srila Prabhupada is explaining in his purport, like uh, anything he should preach Shabda Brahma,
Mhm.
and he should be considered as whatever he's eating on behalf of Lord Vishnu, if I may say. And so now the Brahmana are by birth, they are so aristocratic. I mean, they are so like special.
Mhm.
So how we considered all of a sudden they fall from grace, and everyone in the material right now in this yuga is Shudra.
I know of persons who are born Brahmanas who are not fallen. I mean, a devotee I work with on the Shastric Advisory Council, Hari Parshad, he's born Sarasvat Brahmana family, and he's certainly not fallen. He's a real Brahmana by any way of measuring or understanding Brahmana. He's born in a high grade Sarasvat Brahmana family. He had all the samskaras. He studied in Gurukula from a very young age. He learned all the Vedas, and he also has, Vaishnava Diksha as a Gaudiya Vaishnava, and he has certainly all brahminical qualities. So, it's not that everyone born in a Brahmin family now is automatically a Shudra. What we mean by that, Kalo Shudra Sambhava, it's not that there aren't people with brahminical inclinations or kshatriya inclinations or vaishya inclinations. That's not what we mean. But we mean that people are not having the samskaras and they're not having the training. And it's just what's happening at the present time, that most human beings are not having the training. How does that happen? Kali Yuga is a facility for fallen souls to become humans. So definitely birth in a Brahmin family, even in Kali Yuga, is an opportunity. But they may not be taking it.
Thank you.
All right, and Preston, you're saying about I carry what they lack and I preserve what they have. This can be related from our previous lives. Yeah. So Supriya, you said you also had that experience. I mean, again, the majority of devotees that I know, we had some experience that our urge for spirituality and our urge for God was there. It was just within us, most of us. And if it wasn't that, then it was something else. My husband, he was looking for a guru. I was looking for God. He was looking for a guru. He said from a young age, he kept wishing that he had been born in the time of Jesus. And he was always thinking, I wish I could meet Jesus. I wish I could meet Jesus. I wish I could meet some teacher like Jesus. You have devotees who went to India looking for a guru. There's different ways it may manifest in different people. But I think most of us have that experience, that there was something about us that was urging towards transcendence. Great. Again, it's going to show up very differently in different people. Right. Bhakti Rasa Amrita Sindhu. And we're looking now at chapters 2 and 3. So we're looking here in chapter 3. It will be an overview of the 3 categories of devotional service, and particularly emphasis on sadhana bhakti. It's going to be what makes one eligible for practicing sadhana bhakti is attraction to Krishna. And the most important is to always remember Krishna and never forget him. Now, this slide is very significant. It gives the logical analysis that's given in chapter 2. And I've been teaching Nectar of Devotion in Bhakti Shastri for, since my oldest son, who's 46, since he was 14. So you can do the math. So it's been a long time. And somehow, just this time, I got this logic of chapter 2. So we had in the introduction was the definition of bhakti, anyabhilasita sunyam gyanakarna anavritam anukulina krishnanu shilanam bhaktiruttam. Chapter 1 was the symptoms of pure devotional service, Klesh Agni, Sandrananda, etc. Chapters 2 to 5 are what qualifies you to take up devotional service. So what are the parts of devotional service and what qualifies you to start? All right, the first point in chapter 2 is that sadhana bhakti is a practice to awaken dormant love for Krishna, or bhava and prema. So prema is our natural state. To awaken bhava and prema, one engages in sadhana bhakti. Next point. Sadhana bhakti can have 2 different kinds of inspiration: scripture and guru, or natural attraction. If sadhana bhakti is inspired by scripture and guru, it's called Vaidhi bhakti, Vaidhi sadhana bhakti. If our sadhana bhakti is inspired by natural attraction, it's called raga or raganuga sadhana bhakti. To be eligible, so first it's defining sadhana bhakti. Okay. So here we have, this is the definition of sadhana bhakti. 2 different divisions or impetuses for sadhana bhakti. What qualifies us to start sadhana bhakti? Having a taste or attraction for Krishna. So that's true for Vaidhi or for Raga. The basic principle for sadhana bhakti is to always remember Krishna and never forget him. That can be best done by hearing and chanting. And one can remember Krishna in any varna or ashram, in any occupation. Yes, Mahalakshmi.
can be, because sadhana bhakti can be inspired by scripture and guru or by natural attraction. Can be both be present?
If you're
Or one overlaps the
well, sort of, kind of. Because as we see here, the qualification for taking up either kind of sadhana bhakti is a taste or attraction for Krishna. So even Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, the main qualification is some sort of attraction. But when we say natural attraction, we are talking specifically, although Prabhupada defines it rather liberally in this chapter, but it does mean a specific attraction to Krishna as a friend, as a lover, as a son.
Okay.
Although Prabhupada is talking like about it just that you like to wake up for Mangalacharana. But it is the primary thing. Obviously, people in Raganuga are also inspired by scripture and guru.
Yeah.
But that's not their main reason. As we go on, let's see if it gets a little clearer.
Thank you.
Anyway, this is really important. Just understand this. You could say that this outline of chapter 2 is kind of a synopsis of bhakti. So sadhana bhakti is a practice to awaken what's dormant. It's either Vaidhi, which is inspired by scripture and guru, or natural attraction. What's eligible is having some taste or attraction. The basic principle is to always remember Krishna and never forget him. The main way to do that is hearing and chanting. And you can always remember Krishna and never forget him in any situation in life by offering one's activities to Krishna. So not just hearing and chanting. Okay, so there's 3 stages or categories. And this is also very important. When we define pure devotional service, anyabhilasi tasanyam gyanakarma anavritam anukulena krishna anushilanam bhakti uttamam, people may think, well, to be anyabhilasi tasanyam, to be free from any other desire, well, that must be prema. But we're saying you can have prema, love of God, in pure devotional service. You can have ecstasy, which is the preliminary stage of love in pure devotional service. And you can be practicing pure devotional service. You can be practicing pure devotional service. So that would mean there may be other material desires. There are other material desires. But your aim is pure devotional service. Therefore, it's pure devotional service in practice. Now, here we're pulling directly from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu because Prabhupada just mentions it in the first couple paragraphs of chapter 2. He doesn't explain it. He says it will be explained later on. In the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, it's actually explained right then and there. So we're pulling here from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu that these were the 6 characteristics and how they are in each. Because Prabhupada just says there's 2, there's 4, there's 6. He doesn't explain it, right? If we look at the Nectar of Devotion, chapter 2, he just says the 3 categories. There are many subheadings. He says, generally it is understood in the category of devotional service and practice, there are 2 qualities, in ecstasy 4, and devotional service and pure love of God is 6. So it's just 1 paragraph. These qualities will be explained by Srila Rupa Goswami later on. Actually, they're explained right here. And it's never explained further in the Nectar of Devotion. So we're pulling here, we're going directly to Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, so you can understand what Prabhupada's talking about. These are the qualities that were described in chapter 1. So in sadhana bhakti, both regulated and spontaneous, there's relief from all distress and all auspiciousness, those 2. These are some symptoms by which you can tell, am I really doing pure devotional service? In bhava, there's relief from all distress, all auspiciousness. There's happiness deriving liberation, and it's rare. It has a difficult attainment. In prema, there's relief from all distress, all auspiciousness, happiness above liberation, rarity, incalculable bliss, and that it attracts Krishna. So you want to see the Sanskrit terms. So prema has all 6, bhava has 4, and sadhana has 2. All right. So after describing that there's sadhana bhakti, bhava bhakti, and prema bhakti, then what's going to be described is sadhana bhakti. So in chapters 2 through 16, it's going to be sadhana bhakti. 17 and 18 are bhava bhakti, 19 is prema bhakti. Vaidhi bhakti is described in chapters 3 to 14. Raganuga sadhana bhakti is described in chapters 15 to 16. Okay, so let's look at the difference here. So what's our reason for doing bhakti? Like I remember when I was very new in ISKCON that I had some doubt. I can't remember what the doubt is anymore. I remember where I was. I remember what street I was walking on very clearly, but I don't remember what my doubt was. I had some doubt. And then I thought, is there a God? Definitely, there's a God. Okay. Is God Krishna? Well, it certainly seems like that. I can't think of, Krishna seems like the best description of God, and I can't think of any better description. How did I know about Krishna? From Srila Prabhupada. Okay. What was I using to deal with my doubt? I was using logic and scriptures. I was asking myself, why am I practicing Krishna consciousness? Why am I here practicing Krishna consciousness? And when I gave the answer, to myself, I gave the answer based on logic. Does everybody follow that? That means my impetus, my reason for practicing Krishna consciousness was, what does it say in the scriptures? What does my guru say? What is logical? It makes sense to me. Now, I also had some attraction to Krishna. If I didn't have some attraction to Krishna, I wouldn't have come. But the main impetus was logic and reason. Well, the scriptures are providing something really logical and really reasonable, and I accept it. Everybody follow that? But then if you were to say to someone, why are you in Krishna consciousness? And they just say, because Krishna is so wonderful and I love him and I just want to serve him. And somebody might say, well, there's a Shiva Purana. It says that Shiva is supreme. And I don't care if Shiva is supreme in that scripture. It doesn't matter to me. I just want to serve Krishna. So that's a different reason for acting. Let's think of it in mundane terms. So I'm sure you know of people, hopefully you are not one of them, but I'm sure you know of people who stay in a marriage out of dharma. There's not much affection, there's not much attraction, but in order to be a good person, they stay in a marriage. I'm sure you all know people like that. Again, I hope none of you are in that category. I'm staying with this woman because she's my wife and we have children together and it's the right thing to do. I remember talking to one man, he said, if I were to divorce my wife now at my age and find another woman, it would be so much trouble. Better to just, stay where I am. And he had affection for his wife. It wasn't that he didn't have any affection for his wife, but the main motive was to be pious. That was the main motive, was to be pious. Raghu Maharaj? I'm not sure who that is.
He is the Ikshvaku dynasty, we can say, as a founder mother.
Well, I mean, it's good to have a sense of duty, but if that's the primary reason you're staying in a marriage, that doesn't sound very pleasant.
Oh, he was begetting the son because it was his responsibility to have a son, but always he was in, of course, in the worship of the Lord.
I'll be done at 12:15.
Okay. Is this power? No, the power is the same in this building?
Well, the power was off, but it's back on now.
Okay, yeah.
I did lose power before. Very briefly, and then it went back on. Okay, honey. I mean, even in a loving marriage, in a happy marriage, that may be true at a particular time. So, maybe Monday at 10 a.m., you just had a huge fight with your husband, and you would, at that particular moment, you don't care if you never see him again. And you're staying in, or you might even prefer never to see him again, but you're staying in that marriage out of Dharma. At least at that moment at Monday at 10 a.m., maybe at Monday at 11:30, you don't feel that way. There may be moments like that. So, but if you're, then that's why I think Mahalakshmi is asking, can it be both? So I think even at the beginning stage of Raganuga, there may still be some strong sense of Vaidhi. Yeah. But if you're in a marriage because you just love the person and you're just crazy about them, and you're there you just love them and you're crazy about them. I mean, the fact that you're legally married and that society expects you to be married is like, that's not why I'm here. I'm here because I just love them. I can't imagine having a moment in my life without them. So again, most people aren't like that all the time. But I know of people who have marriages like that. I'm sure you all know of people who have marriages like that. Hopefully you're in one, at least most of the time. But I know people who have marriages like that. They say, I'm with my wife or I'm with my husband because I want to be with them. I feel blessed that they're in my life, and they're a real partner to me, and so forth. So that's a material example, and we can think of that even for a job. There are people who have a job because, well, I have a job because I have to earn money and I have to pay my bills, and so I work this job and I like my work and I enjoy my work, but my main reason I'm here is to support myself. I like it and I enjoy it and it's fulfilling. Or, wow, I would do this work even if I didn't get paid.
Mother?
If I didn't need any money, I would do it anyway because I just love what I'm doing. Yes.
I have one question. Sorry about this. I thought the whole point.
Don't have to be sorry about asking questions. I want you to ask questions. You should say, I have a question, and I go, yes.
Well, my question was like the whole point of having the marriage is like understanding that, okay, why we are here and how we are going to serve the Lord and how we are going to get back together as a family. That's what I was thinking.
I'm just using that as an analogy.
Okay.
I'm using that as an analogy. So to try to make things clearer, it's not the same, but it has some points of similarity.
Because love towards whether it's a husband or a wife or a child would not be the same
as. It's just an analogy.
Okay, got it, Mother.
So and you might feel this way again about a job. So maybe you love your work so much that if you didn't need money, you would still do it because you love it so much. So, think about that. If you have a job that you love it so much that even if you were as rich as Bezos or Gates, you would still do the job just because you love it. So are you doing a job primarily because you love doing it, or primarily because it's the right thing to do and it pays you? You may still like it. You may still get a taste from it. You may still be attracted to it. But if you didn't need the income, you would quit. So again, that's an analogy. So one still has a taste for Krishna, one has attraction for Krishna, but the main reason one is doing bhakti is one is convinced by the Shastras and by Guru. That's the main reason. And raga is the main reason you're doing bhakti, is you just love it. And generally what that means is you have an awakening of a particular relationship. And the reason we can say that it usually means that is that when we get to the study of Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti, and this was, I think you asked it, it involves following, or someone asked, who was asking me about Radharani? Somebody was asking me the other class.
I was asking.
You were asking, okay. So we talk about, following a particular resident of Vrindavan. That is the practice of Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. So the two big differences between Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti and Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti are the impetus And in chapter 2, we're just talking about the impetus. The impetus for one is faith in Shastra and Guru. The impetus for the other is natural love. And those aren't mutually exclusive, but we're talking about the main impetus. But then there's a difference in the practice of Vaidhi and Raganuga sadhana. That's not discussed until later, into chapters 15 and 16. The main difference in the practice, which is why I say generally Raganuga also involves some awakening of a specific relationship with Krishna, is that in Raganuga sadhana bhakti, one specifically follows a devotee in Vrindavan who has a similar mood. So in Raganuga sadhana bhakti, if you feel you're a cowherd boy, you're specifically meditating on Subal. Like I mentioned, Prabhupada told Yamuna to meditate on Mother Yasoda. So how are you going to do that if you don't know who you are? If you don't know you're in parental rasa, why would you specifically meditate on Mother Yasoda? If you don't know you're in Sakya Bhav, why would you particularly meditate on Subal? And that is the major difference between how you practice sadhana bhakti under Vaidhi and how you practice sadhana bhakti under Raga. That's what differentiates the sadhana. So the sadhana under Raganuga sadhana is you specifically meditate on someone in Vrindavan who exemplifies a similar mood. So when we say natural love, we generally mean natural love as in one of the 5 primary relationships. Although Prabhupada here explains it very simply, like instead of being told you have to go to Mangalacharana, you want to go to Mangalacharana. Okay, we're going to go to the Varnas later. That's Prabhupada explains the Varnas and the ashrams at the end of this chapter to show that you can think of Krishna in any situation, but that's not related to what we're doing right now. We'll get there. Any other questions on this between Vaidhi and Raganuga?
When does this Raganuga Bhakti, I mean, how long, like, it is while practicing the sadhana, it comes like, or it takes.
That's like a child saying, when am I going to grow up? You know, as parents, we know puberty usually hits sometime between like 11 and 15. But for an individual, you don't know. For some individuals, it starts at 9. For some, it starts at 17. It starts when it starts.
Some devotees say, no, Mataji, like I'm really attracted to Krishna, and that's why I'm doing all the devotional service. So can we understand them? They are at the level of Raganuga.
Maybe they're saying that just because they're a new devotee and they have false confidence and they think they're already a pure devotee. We call that the pure devotee disease. So sometimes, Vishnu Chaitanya Thakur calls that false confidence. So, sometimes you're brand new to Krishna consciousness and you think you already love Krishna. So that it may be due to that. And generally people who are in Raganuga sadhana, they don't advertise it very much. They may advertise it subtly, but not very much.
And is that the guru has to tell that, like, you have a particular relationship with Krishna?
No,
or
it comes out, it happens on its own. It awakens on its own. That, I mean, like one of my friends who was a pujari for many, many years for Gorni Tai, she was taking care of the deities and was listening to a class, and the person giving the class said, how do you want to serve Krishna? And all of a sudden she had this overwhelming feeling that she wanted to play ball with Krishna. She just this overwhelming feeling. Now, what one should do is one should verify that with guru or with senior devotees.
Okay.
One should verify. But no, it's not something that the senior devotee is going to tell you. It's something that arises. Raganuga Bhakti and Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti are the same. Like you can say Vaidhi Bhakti or Raganuga Bhakti. They're both in the category of sadhana. They're both in the practice of practice.
So we will be knowing when we do our sadhana bhakti at one point of time, we will automatically know in what relationship
It will just
we are.
awaken.
Okay, yeah.
And how it will awaken will differ for each person, and where it will awaken. I had one senior devotee tell me that it happened for him flying in an airplane. You know, it just awakens. It's again like, how do you know you've hit puberty? I mean, you have physical symptoms, but there's a change in your mentality too, isn't there?
Yeah.
You see the world in a new way.
Mm.
And if you try to act like a little child again, it doesn't work. I mean, I remember, you know, when I was like 12, I took out my toys and I tried to play with them and I couldn't. There was no rasa in it anymore. I just couldn't do it. Huh?
Once I was reading the what you call, like all the scriptures, not all the scriptures, few scriptures. Like then I was suddenly feeling I should know more about Radharani more and more. When Damodar month comes, it also refers to, it's a favorite month for Radharani, so I have to know more and more about her. So that type of feelings are suddenly happening. I cannot trust it is something like I wanted to, I have a weekend or something like that, because
Well,
I'm
it's
just
very,
questioning my
it's very interesting. Prabhupada does say that that also what's indicated is what particular pastimes we like to hear about, you know, what we particularly relish, but there will be a specific feeling towards Krishna. I mean, another way I could explain it is I remember meeting a god sister years ago. I had never met her before. And as soon as I met her, I just said, I want to be your friend. Have you ever met someone that you're just like, I want to be this person's friend? There's a feeling of friendship that awakens. Where does it come from? I don't know. Who knows? Or I tell the story many times. I was in Bloemfontein, South Africa, and there was a devotee couple that was running a restaurant there and a preaching center. And man, did they work hard, especially the wife was working really hard to run this restaurant. And at one point I was watching her cooking. She was always blissful. I was watching her cooking and I had this feeling, I want to serve her. It was a feeling. It wasn't like my parents taught me when I was a child to be helpful. That would be Vaidhi. Vaidhi would be, I'm sitting there watching her work hard and smiling and thinking, wow, you know, I'm a guest here and she's working so hard. And, you know, it's the rule of the scriptures that I should be helpful. Let me go be helpful. That would be Vaidhi. But I had a spontaneous feeling. I want to help her. I want to serve her. I just want to serve her. And, you know, romantic attraction is like that. I mean, who can understand it? Some, you know, a man's walking down the street and there's 100 women walking past and one of them he looks at and he goes, oh my God, that's the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. And another person might look at her and say, really? You know, but there's this strong, spontaneous romantic attraction. And the same with parental. You know, I tell this story a lot. Also, I was waiting to board a flight, and there was this couple with a little girl, 2-3 years old. You know, like ultimate cuteness stage. And not only was this girl at the ultimate cuteness stage, she had on some costume like a ballerina or fairy or something. You know, which amped up the cuteness by like 10 times. So she was now, you know, by her age, she was already at the cuteness pinnacle. And then from her costume, she was super cuteness. And then the parents dealing with this child was very loving. And we're waiting to board the plane. And this kid, she's a little kid, so she's running around. And she's running here and there, and then running to her father, and then running to her mother, and they're picking her up in the air, and they're laughing. And everybody in the line, maybe not everybody, maybe there was some sour person, but you know, pretty much everyone in the line was looking at this child with affection. It's just natural. We all felt parental toward this child. And again, it wasn't logical. It wasn't like, I am an adult human. This is a child human. Adult humans are supposed to care for child humans. and therefore I should take care of this child. It wasn't like that. It was a feeling. It was a feeling. I mean, you know, obviously we had social decorum, so we weren't all picking up the kid, but you felt like that. You felt like you wanted to pick up the kid and swing her around and hug her. And, you know, we didn't, obviously. But the feeling of the parents was, at least appeared to be felt by everybody watching. So that's a material example of spontaneous or a neutrality, you know, some big famous person and we just want to see them, you know, we just want to see the Queen of England or something, have her just look at us. So these feelings arise by, how do they arise? I mean, we can talk about the udipans, what stimulates them. But they just come. I just feel friendly, or I feel that I want to serve, or I feel parental, or I feel romantic. So that will arise toward Krishna.
So
There'll be an awakening of a feeling that, wow, I want Krishna as my child. It's not something intellectual. It's not like, well, I've been practicing Krishna consciousness for so long, it's time for me to do Raganuga Bhakti, you know, just like the time has come and the gopis are the best and Radharani is the best gopi, so I think I'll meditate on Krishna with Radharani. And yes, Devi.
Mataji, my question was when we feel like this particular guru is my spiritual master, is it something like that kind of a feeling? Like suddenly we realize it?
But that's not rasa. It's not rasa. Rasa is different. Rasa is with Krishna.
The problem is like when I feel like that, I think I'm not eligible. So Prabhupada hasn't said
Very
like
good.
that.
Very
So-
good. Very good. So if people feel like this, how do they know it's real? Okay, number one is it's got to be a spontaneously arising feeling. It can't be an intellectual adjustment. It can't be, you know, I've decided after reading the scriptures that it's best to be a parent, so I'm going to meditate on Krishna as my son. It has to be a spontaneously arising feeling. Next thing is the person has to feel unqualified. So if a person thinks, oh yeah, I'm such an advanced devotee, no wonder I've fallen in love with Krishna. That's not the right thing. And most of the people who feel they're qualified also go right for the Madhurya Bhav. So the person feels unqualified. Again, if we're going to materially compare it to puberty, you don't really even believe it at first, isn't it? You know, when I was 13 and I started spending time fixing my hair every day for the first time in my life, if someone had come and said, you're trying to attract men, I would have said, no, I'm not. I don't know if you remember those times, but yeah, I would have said that. I would have said, I'm not interested in boys. I just all of a sudden care what I look like. I don't know why all of a sudden I care what I look like. I mean, I remember it very clearly. All of a sudden I was styling my hair and I was trying to wear fashionable clothes. I'd never cared before. So, you know, there's some sense, no, I'm not in Raganuga Bhakti. That's ridiculous. I'm still a fallen soul. I have so many problems. And how could this be real? Another symptom is it doesn't go away. That once it, I mean, unless you're very offensive to Vaishnavas, but unless you're very offensive to Vaishnavas, once that awakens, it's there. And you'll see people will be like, I'm not qualified. Let me just try to forget about this. This is not right. I don't want to be a Sahajya. You know, just, I'm going to try to forget about it, but it doesn't go away. It's already awakened. It's already there. You can't undo it.
Is it that if we are still not purified and still we can awaken that type of rasa? I don't know whether it
Well,
makes
first
sense.
of all, a devotee is never going to feel that they're fully purified. A devotee is always going to feel fallen. So if you're going to wait until you feel fully purified, you'll be waiting eternally. because the devotee always feels fallen. Even Radharani thinks she's fallen. Even Lord Chaitanya thinks he's fallen. So that's not going to work. The other thing is that generally Prabhupada says raga awakens at the end of anartha nivritti, around nista, and he'll usually say about 50% anartha is finished. From Madhurya Kadambati, it looks like it's about 40%. So there's still going to be anarthas. And one of the main evidences that there'll still be anarthas is Manashiksha, which is the guidebook for Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. So Manashiksha of Raghunath Das Goswami, which we published, is specifically a guidebook for Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. That's what it is. And it talks there, Raghunath Das Goswami talks about the awakening of Raga in text 3, and then text 4, 5, 6, and 7 are about anarthas and obstacles, and pretty heavy ones, in fact. So this will awaken when there's still anarthas, yes. I would compare it to an invitation. The first awakening of Raga, I would compare it to an invitation.
Thank you, Mom.
Krishna sends you an invitation at the mail. You're not at the party yet. You've got an invitation, and then you need to develop it. All right, we have a lot to cover. I hope it's all right if I move on. We will be discussing more Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti in chapters 15 and 16, where Rupa Goswami is discussing it in general. All right, so eligibility for Sadhana Bhakti in general is attraction to pleasing Krishna, some attraction to Krishna, some taste. And as we had the discussion earlier, that usually comes from our previous lives, and ultimately it comes from the mercy of a pure devotee. So it's possible for it to start in this life. Generally, it takes some time for that attraction to mature. Now, this is a really important point. And here's the definition of sadhana bhakti, both Vaidhi and Raga. It's a systematic practice executed with the mind and senses that reawakens the ecstatic love of Godhead lying dormant within the heart. It doesn't create love of God, it revives it. So sadhana is the sunlight, the water, etc., that wakes up what's already in the heart. It's for purifying the heart and attracting the Lord's mercy. Yes, Mahalakshmi.
What does it mean that Raganuga Bhakti comes from the spiritual master? It means that
no, the bhakti in general comes from the spiritual master.
Yes.
By the mercy of a devotee, if we think of it as a seed. So you already have a seed, but by the mercy of a devotee, the seed gets water and sunlight.
Okay.
Okay?
Yes.
That's true in general for sadhana bhakti. And Prabhupada makes two analogies, like learning how to walk and like regaining your health. So we're naturally healthy. A medical program helps us regain our health. A child has natural walking ability. A newborn baby, in the first minutes after birth, has a propensity to walk. So the practice is awakening something that's natural. It's not like, say, gymnastics. We don't have a natural ability for gymnastics. You can, or violin playing. So you can develop that by practice. That's different than the practice of sadhana bhakti, which is awakening something that's already there. There's a very, very important verse. If someone can read this, Prabhupada's translation.
Krishna consciousness cannot be aroused simply by practice. Actually, there is no such practice. When we wish to develop our innate capacity for devotional service, there are certain processes which, by our accepting and executing them, will cause that dormant capacity to be invoked. Such practice is called sadhana bhakti.
Very important. Now, chapter 2 is so important, everybody. Whoa! What is the most important part of sadhana? Is to always remember the Lord and never forget him. And Rupa Goswami gives evidence from Narada talking to Yudhisthira. Now look at this, where Prabhupada says it's the duty of the spiritual master to find the ways and means for a disciple to always remember Krishna. That is the beginning of sadhana bhakti. So some people think, well, I can't try to remember Krishna until I'm, an advanced devotee. Sadhana bhakti is remembering Krishna. That's it's the practice of remembering Krishna. Now, how are we going to practice to remember Krishna? The main way is hearing about Krishna, chanting about Krishna. Hearing about Krishna, chanting about Krishna helps us to do the main practice of sadhana bhakti, which is to always think of Krishna. And again, when the inspiration comes from the scriptures and the order of guru, is Vaidhi sadhana. When the inspiration comes from a natural attraction, one engages in Raganuga sadhana. Now, always remember Krishna, never forget him. All the other rules are servants of these two. So this means if I always remember Krishna, I'll naturally do the rules. And it means the purpose of doing the rules is to always remember Krishna. So if we always remember Krishna, all the other injunctions fall into line, like servants of a king. The king is always remembering Krishna. If I always remember Krishna, I will naturally follow all the rules. And the purpose of the rules is to always remember Krishna. So we already said the main way to always remember Krishna is hearing and chanting. What about the rest of my life when I'm not just hearing and chanting? How do I always remember Krishna in the rest of my life? Therefore, Prabhupada says that this principle of always remembering Krishna, never forgetting him, applies to all the occupations we can do for our livelihood and all our stages of life. Now, Prabhupada's assuming that the readers of Nectar of Devotion might not be familiar with the Varnas and Ashramas, so he describes a little bit of what they are, and then he tells us how we can always remember Krishna in each Varna. So a Brahmana who's born out of the head of the Lord, he can always remember Krishna by eating for Krishna and by preaching about Krishna. Kshatriya can always remember Krishna by protecting people from Maya. A Vaishya can always remember Krishna by providing wealth and sustenance for the society. And a Shudra can remember Krishna, always remember Krishna, by making society beautiful and functional. Now, I really like this verse. Somebody read this verse that Rupa Goswami.
Yes. Srimad Bhagavatam 27, chapter 49. Okay. My dear Uddhava, all
It's 11th
persons.
canto.
What?
It would be the 11th canto. I don't have that there.
All persons are engaged in activities, whether those indicated in the revealed scriptures or ordinary worldly activities. If by the result of either of such activities they worship me in Krishna consciousness, then automatically they become very happy within this world, as in the next. Of this, there is no doubt.
Thank you. So we always remember Krishna and never forget him by hearing and chanting in bhakti, and also in all of our occupations and all of our ordinary activities, remember Krishna and dedicate everything to him. And after Prabhupada describing how we can do that as a Brahmana, as a Kshatriya, as a Vaishya, and a Shudra, then what does he say? Someone who can read this?
The Krishna consciousness movement is so nice that there is no need of even designating oneself Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra, Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, or Sannyasi. Let everyone be engaged in whatever occupation he now has. Simply let him worship Lord Krishna by the result of his activities in Krishna consciousness. That will adjust the whole situation, and everyone will be happy and peaceful within this world. Hare Krishna.
So this is Srila Prabhupada's giving his mission. Whatever you are, whatever you're doing, I mean, not that you should be a butcher or a sex worker, but whatever you are, whatever you're doing, be always conscious of Krishna. Always remember Krishna and dedicate everything you're doing to him. All right, chapter 3.
Mother?
Yes.
Related to that last line, I was having one question that was coming again and again back to me, and somehow I'm not able to get the answer. Swadharma and Paradharma. So when you just said that one word, saying that, not being a butcher, if that was someone's profession, and that is my swadharma, and paradharma is like,
It can't be the swadharma. It can't be.
oh,
Because it's not within the realm of any of the varnas. It's
okay.
adharma. So, you know, if you're slaughtering animals, you're a strip dancer, you're a mafia boss, whatever, you know, that's adharma. That's a perversion of one of the varnas. It's not the varna.
So, Mother, in that context, then at least my understanding is Krishna says that it's always better to have one's own swadharma, although it is not that great as what paradharma seems to be like. So, from that sense, how do I know, like, what is my swadharma?
That is a very big topic, which there's no way that I have time to cover that today. I do have classes on my YouTube channel that go over how do you tell what varna one belongs in.
Okay, Mother.
Okay, but certainly we should never be promoting sinful activities. So if one has a job promoting sinful activities, that's not their swadharma. That's some perversion of their swadharma.
Okay.
Good question, thank you. Chapter 3, summary is the eligibility for accepting devotional service. So we already established in chapter 2 that the main eligibility is attraction. And now remember, we're looking first at sadhana bhakti, and we're going to look first at Vaidhi sadhana bhakti. So in chapter 2, we talked about both Vaidhi and Raganuga sadhana bhakti. Now we're going to be focusing on just Vaidhi. So specifically being eligible for Vaidhi, because advancement in Vaidhi sadhana bhakti depends on, you've got to be inspired by Shastra. And so you're more eligible, the more you know Shastra and the more you have faith in Shastra, the more eligible you are to do Vaidhi sadhana bhakti. This is just very logical. So if my impetus for doing bhakti is Shastra, the more I know the Shastra and the more I believe in the Shastra, the better qualified I'm going to be to do Vaidhi sadhana bhakti. So we're going to look at 3 levels of eligibility for Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, and then rejecting bhukti and mukti, which will be covered a lot more in chapter 4. Okay, this quote is just so far out. It's sort of, you'd like, really? Anybody like to read this?
Yes,
On account of his association with Mahatmas or great souls, 100% in the devotional service of the Lord, one may attain a little bit of attraction for Sri Krishna. But at the same time, one may remain very much attached to the fruitive activities and material sense enjoyment and not be prepared to undergo the different types of renunciation. Such a person, if he has unflinching attraction to Krishna, becomes an eligible candidate for discharging devotional service.
Interesting, huh? Interesting. So the eligibility is we're attracted, but we're not too detached either. Not too attached, not too detached. Very interesting. All right, so eligibility for Vaidhi sadhana. Attraction to Krishna's service. Nothing else. Then you're qualified to begin. You get that attraction from other devotees. And also it's good if you're not too detached. So again, Vaidhi sadhana means your attraction to Krishna's service comes from the inspiration of Shastra and Guru. So the stronger your faith and knowledge of the scriptures, stronger your attachment, the more eligible you are to advance. So then we have 3 levels. Now, I don't know how to say this strongly enough. There's other descriptions of Uttama, Madhyama, and Kanishta that have nothing to do with this. We studied other descriptions of Uttama, Madhyama, and Kanishta in Nectar of Instruction, in Ishopanishad. It's different from this. This is about eligibility for taking up Vaidhi sadhana bhakti. So you're most eligible if you have strong faith in Shastra and you can convince others. You have a middle amount of eligibility. If you have strong faith and you know enough about Shastras that other people can't convince you to leave bhakti, but you may not be able to convince them to take it up. Beginning eligibility, you have weak faith in Shastra and you have weak knowledge of Shastra, and you can easily be deviated. Because remember, in Vaidhi Bhakti, Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, the whole basis is Shastra and Guru. So the more you know Shastra and the more faith you have in Shastra, the easier it is for you to advance in Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. So these are the 3 grades of eligibility in Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. Okay. And if we're going to talk about kanistas, the beginners, Rupa Goswami talks about the 4 beginners from Bhagavad Gita 7:16. So among those who have weak knowledge and weak faith are those, because pure devotional service is I just want to please Krishna. So if I want answers to my questions about the universe and God, and so if that's my motive, if my motive is to get free from distress, if my motive is to get wealth, then I'm not going to have that much faith in doing service just to please Krishna. I'm going to say, well, I don't know if I want to do that. And these are, of course, the 4 examples that Rupa Goswami gives. Gajendra, who wanted freedom from distress, Dhruva, who wanted wealth, the sages who wanted their philosophical curiosity answered, and the 4 Kumaras who were already Brahman realized and wanted to go forward. What disqualifies one for taking up sadhana bhakti is if we want to enjoy the world or we want liberation. This is why we're saying not too attached and not too detached. Because how am I going to do anya bilasita sunyam jnana karma anavritam if I'm really attached to bhakti and mukti? Bhakti means I want to enjoy my senses and my mind. Mukti, I want to get out of here. And Rupa Goswami says if we desire bhakti and mukti, it's like we're haunted. It's like we're being controlled by someone else. I can't really do the best thing for myself. I'm just haunted by these witches. And if I'm haunted by these witches of bhakti and mukti, then it's hard for me to enjoy the taste of bhakti, because bhakti is anyabilasita sunyam. I'm trying to just please Krishna, just to please Krishna. And I'll be like, well, I want liberation. You know, I want a nice car. Why would I want to please Krishna just to please Krishna? Right? So then Rupa Goswami starts giving examples of this freedom from bhakti and mukti. Right? So who can tell me the Sanskrit of this verse? Someone tell me the Sanskrit of this verse.
Ainandata nija kinkaram mat.
Almost.
Nadananna yananna sundarin kavitam vayagarisa kamaye. Mamayan maniyan manishvare bhavata atai tuki.
Yes. So this needs to be the mood. My dear friends, if this is not our mood today, we at least want to aspire for this mood. Aspiring for this mood puts us at least as a beginner in pure devotional service. All right, and again, we're going to mention this over and over and over again, that the Nectar Devotion is authorized scripture because Rupa Goswami quotes from the Shastras to back up what he says. Important. We should be able to back up what we say, at least philosophically, with Shastra. So he's giving examples of devotees who are uninterested in bhakti and mukti. And then the next chapter, chapter 4, which we'll do next week, it's pretty much all it is. It's just lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of examples from the scripture of being free from bhakti and mukti. All right. We have 15 minutes left. I'm very proud of myself again that I did that. Yay. Can't always do that. Sometimes I go overtime, but I really, really, really try. So we have an extra 15 minutes, anything at all. We had so many things we covered today. Like, oh my God, wow. Anything anybody would like to bring up about anything we covered today? So you can just, you must not be, it doesn't show you as being muted, but I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
So you mentioned a few times that we shouldn't be so detached. So how do we find that balance?
Mhm. Well, if we're so detached, that means we're going to be going for mukti.
Okay, so that's what you meant in terms of being so detached that we're impersonal.
Or just that our motive for approaching Krishna is to get out of here. You know, if we're too attached, then our motive for approaching Krishna, I'm so glad you asked this. If we're too attached, then our motive for approaching Krishna is going to be like Dhruva and Gajendra. And if we're too detached, our motive for approaching Krishna is going to be, you know, get me out of here. And if those are our motives, we're going to have difficulty relishing pleasing Krishna just to please Krishna. Because we're going to want something from him that's selfish.
So what do we let our motive be so that we eventually have no motive?
Well, we should have a motive. The motive should be that we want to just please Krishna because we love him.
Okay.
So
that could be like
that we recognize that that's there.
Hmm.
You know, I would definitely like to be liberated. You know, when I hear devotees say, I want to take birth after birth, I'm like, what are you, crazy? No, it's funny. There's this one Guru Kuli she made a very popular CD. And one of her songs is over and over and over again. She says, you know, I want to just come here over and over and over again to chant your holy name.
I know that song.
You know that song by Danya? And whenever I hear that, I'm just like, what's wrong with you? I want my ticket out of here, you know. But then there's a problem. You know, that's a problem. Or, you know, if we're worshiping Krishna because we want money, or we want, you know, like Kardama Muni, who said, I'm worshiping you, Krishna, because I want a compatible wife. So I think Kardama Muni gives a really nice example. He's admitting, he says, you know, Krishna, I'm worshiping you because I want a compatible wife. I mean, it was for service, my God, you know, it wasn't like it wasn't for service. Right. They have these 9 daughters that marry the sages and populate the universe, which is what Krishna wants, and they give birth to God, for goodness sake. But still, he was saying, I have some desire for a happy family. And he says, I'm sorry, Lord, I realize that this is, because then we're using Krishna. You know, then I'm using him. Like people use us, you know. I'm sure people use you. People use me. And it's unpleasant. I mean, I like to be helpful. I like to help people. But if I can feel they're using me, it's unpleasant, isn't it? It's like, well, they're not contacting me because they care about me. They're contacting me because they want something from me. But at least if we're honest with Krishna, at least if we say, Krishna, you know, I realize that pure love of God, Gajendra says this in his prayers, which we quoted a little later on, I think in chapter 4. You know, I realize that those who love you just to love you are experiencing the highest bliss, and they're experiencing such high bliss that they don't ask you for anything. I understand that, at least theoretically. And I'm sorry, Lord, you know, can you give me a car? I'm really sorry, you know, can you give me a wife, or can you get me out of here? Or, you know, so I'm sorry that I'm asking you for that. At least be honest. I mean, what's really unpalatable, speaking for myself, is when people pretend that they like me, but actually they just want something from me. You know, it's not so bad if people are upfront about it. Then it's just business. You know, that's a lot, it's a lot easier if I'm dealing with a business and I know they just want my money. Right? Now, obviously, if you're friends with someone, you might still ask them for things, but your friendship is not dependent on that. And that's not the reason for your friendship. That's another thing. So if we can at least start to develop that I want to please Krishna just to please Krishna. And I'm sorry, I don't have enough faith to just trust that you're going to give me everything I want. And so sometimes I ask you. Yes, Rasa Bhakti.
Mother, I think my question is related to your last comment too. So like, okay, I want to do bhakti because I want to please Krishna. But then, like, you know, when there's some kind of distress comes up or some health issue comes up, and then, like, you know, you want to pray for good health. Like, is that not right? Or like, our goal is not
Doesn't
that.
matter if it's right or not. If I have a desire, I have a desire. It doesn't matter whether what am I going to do? Say it's not right and so pretend I don't really have a desire? That's not honest. I'll still have that desire. Like I had somebody the other day who was using me for their curiosity. Like we're talking about, wanting wealth, wanting freedom from distress and curiosity. They were using me like I was their hired research assistant. I mean, I'm happy when people ask me philosophical questions. I enjoy that. It's something I enjoy doing. And so it gives me pleasure to do that. But it depends. If people are asking me things that they could very well just look up themselves, and they're asking me because they're lazy, and they think I'm their hired research assistant, which they're not even paying, it becomes unpalatable. It's like, why are you using me? So at the same time, they have those desires. But I'd like them to just be upfront about it. So again, I don't mind if someone has a business like dealing with me as long as it's open. So if we go to Krishna and say, Krishna, I'm really sorry. I have these desires. And I know I should just love you to love you, but I really want to understand this. Give me knowledge. Give me good health. Give me liberation, please. At least he's happy we're going to him. I mean, that was explained by our acharyas in the Bhagavad Gita. At least there's some affection there. I mean, you don't renounce your children just because they ask you for a toy or a cookie. You don't say, you don't have any real love. You're just using me to get toys. You still love them. And if we pretend we don't have those desires, then we're just dishonest. That's much worse. If I pretend that I'm coming to you just as a friend and actually I want to use you for something, that's really unpalatable. Astra is to develop neutrality towards these desires, to just observe them as the thoughts and feelings of the mind and not either identify with them or try to repress them. So we don't want to try to repress them. Oh my goodness, I've had a desire for a car. I've had a desire for knowledge. I've had a desire for liberation. Bad, bad, bad desire. Go away, go away, go away. That doesn't work. It just makes us dishonest and repressed and sicky. And nor is it, well, hey, I got a desire for cars and knowledge and liberation. Let's go for it, Krishna. Give me that car. Meditate. I'm going to meditate on the car all the time. I'm going to perform yajnas to get the car. And I'm just going to go for it because I don't want to be repressed and dishonest. I mean, it's better to say to Krishna, Krishna, I really want that red jaguar, you know, at least I'm coming to you and not to the demigods. Okay. That's better. That's better than repression. But the best thing is to just like laugh at these things. Right when I'm saying it, it just seems so ridiculous, right? It immediately seems it's ridiculous. It's so stupid. And just look at it and go, oh, look at that. There's a desire for red jaguar. There's a desire. In the other day, one devotee right on the Mediterranean. It was so nice. It was so nice. Get up in the morning, I'd brush my teeth, and I'd put on a bathing suit. Brush my teeth, comb my hair, put on a bathing suit, walked out the door, got in the Mediterranean for my shower. Wow, that was nice. That was really nice. You know, so these desires may come, you know, wow, if only I could go take my morning bath in the Mediterranean. And I was really meditating on Lord Chaitanya when I was doing that too, how he would bathe in the sea. I had like a 4-day, I mean, we were doing a lot of preaching programs too, but I was so grateful for Krishna giving me that. So, you know, these thoughts may come. Oh, when will I bathe in the sea again for my morning shower? When will I be free from my, I dropped something on my foot today and it's all bruised, you know. When will my foot feel better? When will I achieve liberation? And when these thoughts come, and they come, when will, you know, my friend like me again? Just look at them and just, you know, just observe them without attachment and without. It's really interesting if you like freedom from distress. Let's say you have some pain somewhere, like I have this pain in my foot now, this big blue mark on it. You know, if I just observe it and go, wow, that's cool. So Krishna arranges that when something falls on your foot, it breaks the blood vessels under your skin. And so that makes this bruise mark. Look at that. And it's all the little parts from the blood come together and it makes the blood clot and it just does all these. Wow, Krishna's just so cool. And I just look at it with curiosity and with humor without thinking, you know, oh, I have to make it better right away. It has to go away. I have to fix it right now. And then I actually don't feel any suffering from it. And it doesn't matter how long it's there and how long it takes to heal. So to do that with all of these things, you know, oh, that's interesting. There's some desire for a red jaguar. By the way, I don't want a car of any kind. You know, or there's some desire to go swim in the Mediterranean, or there's some desire to eat baklava in Turkey, and whatever. You know, look at these are desires, and just kind of laugh at them. That's interesting, and then they just go away. And then I don't have to ask Krishna for them, and I don't have to ask Krishna to make them go away. They just go away, and I'm just like, how silly it is. That's the main way of dealing with them.
Hare Krishna, Mother Urmila, I was just thinking about one thing you said about that we basically have to everything back up with the Shastra, right? Whatever, at least what I was saying. And how would you explain on a practical level? Because sometimes I see that devotees, well, they back up something with Shastra, but it's kind of to correct someone without even these people maybe asking them. So it's, I mean, it comes everything with the Shastra. So what's the practical level of it? Or maybe I take it as offense, or, you know, it might be my own false ego, something like that.
Sounds like you're talking about people who use Shastra as a weapon.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
To just try to convince people who don't want to be convinced, or hit them over the head with their Shastra quotes.
Yes.
So we discussed this in our course on hermeneutics, that there's 3 different types of conversation: Vada, Jalpa, and Vitanda. So in Vada, we're having discussion with guru and disciple, or sometimes between equals, to find truth. Jalpa is, I'm trying to convince you that I'm right. Vitanda is, I don't even have any alternative. I'm just trying to convince you that you're wrong. And jalpa and vitanda are not advised. So trying to convince you that I'm right or convince you that you're wrong without anything positive to give you. That's vitanda. Vitanda, I just want to smash you. I don't even want to give you anything positive. These are under tamagun and rajagun, and they're not conducive for understanding truth. So when I say that we should back up everything we're saying is shastra, it should be in a mood of vada. It should be in a mood of finding truth, not a mood of making ourselves superior or defeating someone. All right, and we have run out of time, although we could discuss these things much longer. And we will see you next week, Krishna willing, and I will put the PowerPoints in the WhatsApp, and I'll put the recordings up a little later. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Mataji, Hare Krishna.